That's hilarious.
All right, I'm going live.
Okay. Sure.
Awesome. And with that, we're live. So, hello and welcome to Season of War. The customary intro, but not a customary video tonight. As I'm sure if have clicked on this video, it's not a battle report. Tonight we're going to be talking about the grand tournament we were all at last weekend. So this past weekend in Toronto, at Red Harvest. This is a local GT for most of us, except Tyler, who flew across the country to join us. So, I guess, wow, yeah, it's been a week, guys. It feels like it was already like a month ago. Maybe that's just being a dad.
But, yeah, probably.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Good.
Yeah,
all in costume.
Yeah,
we're all in costume. Two of us are dressed as Reg.
Yeah. We're not all
ridiculous.
I'm not in costume. I meant to be in costume, but last minute things come together. That's how it goes.
Yeah, this is the only time you'll see me wear a hat. Is when I'm in costume.
Until he wants to win priority roles, then he'll switch.
Perhaps.
All right. Other than that, I guess we can just jump into things, start talking about the event itself. So Red Harvest GT in Toronto was 48 players. I have the meta up on screen, or the army breakdown that was there. So just as a, I guess, brief overview, this was right after, or they confirmed like 5 days before the event or something, that the Iron Jaws FAQ was in play. And it just so happens that there were 7 Iron Jaws players. So instantly big filthy meta. I guess, were there any standouts to you guys in terms of looking at the breakdown when we were, first saw all the armies?
I was just... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Buckets.
I was just surprised about how top-heavy the meta was, and the tournament lists. It was extremely top-heavy. I think only maybe 6 or 7 lists weren't lists that you're constantly seeing people talk about that are 4-1 armies and stuff like that. Yeah. It was... When you look across the table, every opponent, it had a major challenge from a competitive standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there'd be more Stormcast, to be honest, but I think after the Translo jank was FAQ'd, that clearly probably had a bit to do with it. But, still, the long strikes and everything, they're still going to be super good. So I was surprised that there were only 2, but the Iron Jaws makes sense.
Yeah.
I was a bit surprised we didn't have as many giant players. I mean, I'm part of that problem. I didn't play giants, and could have, but that's something that was really prevalent in a lot of our local meta, at least for Toronto. We had a lot more people from international, some international, but mostly from the rest of Canada, which was really awesome.
Yeah, we typically have had like 4 to 5 Garden players at like our 20-person events locally, which is like 20% of the meta. So to only have 4 out of 48 was way lower. So yeah, I mean, nice to see in one regard.
Yeah.
Otherwise, though, as Tyler said, it was pretty, no major surprises, I think. Maybe besides like looking at both Stormcast and Iron Jaws being new and lots of people having those armies. One was at 7, one was at 2, so that was interesting. And then, yeah, very top-heavy in the meta, like Tyler said, a lot of strong armies, a lot of strong builds. As Fjord says, no Sylvaneth, no trees. There was, a lot of Seraphon, which I guess 2 of them were from our team. Mm-hmm. Alex was also at the event with us this past weekend, or last weekend, so he couldn't join us tonight, though. But I guess let's jump in, go through lists to begin with, and we'll be able to talk about, we'll start with lists, and then we'll go round 1, player by player. So just to take us through your lists and kind of your mentality in list building and planning going into the event. Tyler, do you want to kick us off? You're top left on my screen, so you get the honors.
Okay, sure. I played Legion of the First Prince, which is from the Be'lakor expansion book from Broken Realms, if you're not familiar with that list, or that army in general. My battle line units were 2 units of 5 Fleshhounds from Khorne and 1 unit of 10 Pink Horrors, and that filled out my battle line. And then I had really top heavy on the heroes. I had Be'lakor, Kairos Fate Weaver. I had a Bloodthirster of Insensate Rage, which was my general. He had the Ruinous Aura and Armor of the Pact, which lets me reroll all saves in combat. The gentleman here told me there'd be a lot of combat, so this list was kind of designed for the tournament. The next unit was the Slaves to Darkness Khorne Demon Prince with Bloodslick Ground, of course. And then I had the Hellflare Chariot from Slanesh, the Bladebringer on Hellflare Herald, which had the 4-fold blade and flaming weapon. Neat little unit. I don't know how I feel about it now, but it was interesting for the tournament. And I also had the Umbral Spell Portal at 1,995 points. 6 wounds with a Battle Regiment and a Warlord Battalion. 6 drops with a Battle Regiment and a Warlord Battalion, and that was the army.
Nice. And like you said, expecting a lot of combat, ended up panning out for the most. But like, there's still a lot of like mixed arms armies, like Lumineth and Seraphon, but definitely a lot of combat. As you'll see, actually, I have it. The matchups that each of us played while we each go through our lists and whatnot or our rounds, but there's a lot of Iron Jaws for a lot of us.
Yeah.
I think we all played at least 1 or 2 Iron Jaws games. But yeah, speaking of, Carl, do you want to take us through your list?
Sure. So I played Iron Jaws. I decided on the army about, I think, 3 weeks out from the event. And so I had to build, paint, and basically assemble the whole army in those 3 weeks. And so basically the list that I had kind of stemmed from what I read from the book without practice and without refinement. So I took 2 mega bosses on Maw Crushers. One was defensive with Smellion and Amulet of Destiny, while the other was a very, very offensive one with Destroyer and Faston. 2 War Chanters, a Weird Knob Shaman, which was my general, to complete the grand strategy very easily. And he had the great green hand of Gark. And then I had the little Madcap Shaman in my list as well, to have 6 heroes to get the double Warlord Battalion. And then I had 10 Brutes, 3 Gore-Gruntas, 3 Gore-Gruntas. And yeah, that was basically my list. It was all in Bloodtooths. And like I said, double Warlord Battalion. So I was 9 drops. So I was quite high. The kind of secret sauce to my list was my grand strategy, which is Wa, to try to get a either my general or a battle line unit in the opponent's zone. And so I just kept putting my general in the corner, and with Great Green Hand of Gork and Master of Magic, which was his command trait, I was able to just teleport him onto that zone every single time.
Nice. For me, unsurprisingly, probably, I played Lumineth Realm Lords. So pretty much what has been my competitive army for 3.0, pretty much transitioned over from IDK. I mixed things up a little bit. So I had a couple flavor picks in my list. But staples in Lumineth, I played Zytrek this time. First time actually playing Zytrek in a tournament. But I took 30 Sentinels, of course, Teclis, Lord Regent, who is my general, and then a unit of 20 Wardens, a unit of 10 Wardens, a unit of 5 Dawn Riders. So the Dawn Riders were just kind of a flavor pick. Could have been 10 more Wardens, or I've been playing a lot of 40 to 50 Sentinels. But I kind of expecting it to be a little more diverse of a field, I was like, didn't want to tailor as much to the Dargent matchups and that kind of thing. But it's still, I think this was a very balanced build with Lumineth, where I still have a lot of tools for a lot of different situations. As opposed to just I guess more direct hammers. I'm a little more flexible, but less output. That's my list. Pretty simple Lumineth list. And then one big change is I took Spell Portal out of my list and went with the Emerald Life Swarm. But I'll talk about that in my games, but that ended up being an interesting pick. Sir Ridge.
So
we can go.
Ridge.
Oh yeah. My list was Gotrek, Slan.
Yeah, Carl is cheekily me for Halloween. So yeah, Carl, go ahead. You go with the. No, so I was running Fangs of Gotrek essentially. I've talked about on the channel and in other places. Just in our meta, there's so much Iron Jaws and Giants, and Parting Shot is just so good against combat armies. But the ability to teleport as well, just having maneuverability, and then because just having Gotrek, people can avoid him. But when you can teleport salamanders and skinks around and have Gotrek as like a little thing that people are avoiding, it's amazing. So the list was Slan, Skink Priest, Star Priest, Ashleth Bear, and Gotrek, and then 10 Skinks, 5 Source Guard, 30 Skinks, and then two packs of salamanders, and the cogs. So the couple cheeky things that the list does is the cogs are just amazing with Gotrek. So I was very many times staying outside of 9 and then learning, against some giant players that when you roll a 6 to redeploy and Gotrek needs an 11-inch charge, it's pretty frustrating. So so I was doing a lot with that, and then like I said, Parting Shot was huge just for battle tactic denial. For broken ranks or just a lot of little things like that. But yeah.
Nice.
So I guess I'll round it out here. So I played Daughters of Cain. I've been playing Hagnar for Daughters of Cain for a little while, and this is just a refinement of that build. So it's a 2-drop. It comes in at 16 or 1960, which is really good to get that triumph near guaranteed. I got it in all of my games, luckily. And with the 2-drop, usually choosing turn. So I had Marathi, the Shadow Queen, is the only one outside of the Battle Regiment, and then I had Marathi Kane with Mind Razor. My general was a Budrak Medusa with Mirror Dance, the teleport spell, and then I had a Hag on Cauldron with Blessing of Cain for rerolling my after save prayer. And I took an Invocation, which is not one that people have used a lot, but I really like it in the meta, and I'll talk about that in some of my matchups. But it reduces damage by 1, and it's cast or prayed on 3+, so pretty effective. And then I took unit of 20 witches, unit of 10 witches, unit of 15 bow snakes, Marathi and the bow snakes, pretty classic. And then that was it for my list.
Nice. So a good spread between us, no duplicate armies. Alex actually, who again isn't joining us tonight, did play Seraphon, so him and Ridge were both playing the Space Lizards. Alex ran no Gotrek, but a similar list. I know he had 2x2 Sallies, I believe.
Yeah, he had the Star Seer as well, which is just an amazing hero. Which I sacrificed the Astrolith Bear instead of the Star Seer just for the more summoning and whatnot. But yeah, a little similar. He also ran Duralia, which is the one that we've been chatting about now. Carl was kind of first onto her, but just unbelievably good out of the Realm Shaper. Just getting the extra attack and +1 to hit. So many wizards in this meta, and yeah, so now I have mine beside me and cheekily have the cool skink head from the Starblood Stalkers warband on top of her body. I didn't realize that it was $60 for this girl and her dad, which is kind of crazy, but
yeah. I mean, you pop her out of the Realm Shaper engine. She gets an extra 7 inches out of it, and then she doesn't count as moving. So she has like 31, 32-inch threat coming out of the Realm Shaper, which is for 115 points, 8 damage apiece. Is
crazy good.
Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Well, jumping into round 1, it was First Blood was our first mission, if I do recall correctly. So pretty standard. Hold 1, hold 2, hold more. 3 objectives across the angle, so nothing too crazy. We're pretty far apart in deployment. But Tyler, do you want to kick us off round one? Take us through your first game. Who you're playing in that?
So my round one was against a gentleman from Quebec by the name of Guillaume. He traveled to the tournament with his brother, which is really cool to see. It was his first time playing against Chaos Demons, and he was playing Stormcast with the new long strikes and Annihilators and a lot of cool stuff. The hero that brings him back was Cycle of the Storm, and he also had the teleportation.
Mm.
And so pretty scary army. I was able to outdrop him on drops, which was key for my plan with the army and what I wanted to do. First Blood's extremely, I find, is a favorable matchup for Legion of the First Prince. So after going through everything about what the army can do, his deployment helped me out a bit in terms of being able to shut down the long strikes for pretty much the entire game. They weren't able to shoot once at me, which was key because him double tapping them would have been 24 attacks, -2 Ren, 2 damage, and even against with +1 from Finest Hour and all out defense, I could have potentially lost Kairos or my Bloodthirster on the first turn. So I was quite worried about that. I took the turn, scored heavy, scored 6. That was my plan on most battle plans, was to score 6 points on the first turn, and then Bellicorn pass for the double, let my opponent double me. And that's kind of what I did, but it worked out on the first turn. I was able to secure 6 points, pass priority with my Demon Prince up, so any of his Annihilators that did come down couldn't possibly charge me with a rerollable charge. So I set up a nice little castle and scored, locked up his long strikes with the Chaos Spawn, and I just rode it out to victory from there. But Stormcast is way tankier. It was my first time playing against them. I had no idea how tanky that army can be.
Yeah, those 2-up saves, but man, that's actually you were a great counter to it. That's pretty much like a bunch of the pieces that we're to see, I think, a lot in Stormcast armies in the future.
Annihilators,
and
drop down,
and the 6 long strikes and the teleporting. Like, so to be able to shut that down pretty handedly is actually really neat. I haven't thought about that kind of a matchup, but.
Mortals, just need mortals. That 4-fold blade would be loving its life against them.
Yeah, the key against he kept bringing the Annihilators back. I could only kill usually 1 a turn. I don't do much damage, so he could with some of my stuff. But the key was Blood Slick Ground, of course, from the Khorne Demon Prince. Nothing of his could charge me, and I was able to dictate the pace of play on the combats, which was quite well for me. Worked quite well. So I got the victory there. Guillaume was an incredible guy. Him and his brother, they both had gorgeously painted armies, and I think they're going to be playing a lot of Age of Sigmar in 2022. So, pretty cool.
Awesome, Carl. Round 1.
Yeah. So I just want to touch on a controversial topic that all 7 Iron Jaws players had mirror matchups. Well, 6 out of the 7. So I just call foul on that. But I ended up playing an Iron Jaws player, Julian, who I met at Grand Clash earlier this year. And he was running a list that was quite similar to mine, which with 2 Maw Crushers, but instead of the 10 brutes, he just had all pigs. And he didn't have the 6 heroes, he had more pigs. I outdropped him. He was 10 drop, I was 9 drop, so I was able to dictate who went first. And because of how far the deployment for First Blood was, I basically castled in the corner. Having access to the Weird Knob Shaman with Master of Magic, 7 casting value rerolling is about an 86% chance of getting it off, so a little bit better than the 2+ to teleport a unit. And because I had that reliability on my side, I castled up in the corner. He deployed pretty aggressively. I ended up giving him the turn. I put my defensive Maw Crusher pretty central, almost on the line. He attempted to charge everything at it. 2 Maw Crushers tried to get in, weren't able to get in because of how far it was. But pigs were able to get in, and the Maw Crusher basically killed them. On my turn in the bottom, I was able to leverage both my Maw Crushers because of Mighty Destroyers, the teleport, teleporting the brutes. I was able to take one Maw Crusher out, severely hamper the other one. And by that point, when you're losing a Maw Crusher going to the second turn, I have 2 Maw Crushers, 10 brutes, and you have minimum units of 3 Gore Gruntas and 1 Maw Crusher. I'm kind of in the driver's seat. And then I ended up winning turn, which kind of sealed the deal for me. I sandwiched the remaining Maw Crusher with both my Maw Crushers, killed it. What was interesting though, he had one War Chanter who he kept buffing up, and it kept running around the field. I'm like, it's a War Chanter, it doesn't do very much. In one combat, it killed my offensive Maw Crusher. In the next combat phase, it killed 3 Gore Gruntas. And then in the next combat phase after that, it killed my other War Chanter. He was just like running around the field, like killing all these things. I mean, it didn't matter in the end. I was scoring quite a few points, but I was like super amazed. And I actually took that lesson going forward into one of my games. War Chanters are usually sitting in the back and buffing and that sort of thing, but you can throw him in and he can do quite a bit of damage with the D3+1 if he buffs himself, and it's 2s and 3s if you all out attack. So I use that going forward. That little guy in my first game comes back in the third game, and I use him to great effect.
Nice. Cool. Well, for myself, I guess round 1 was a bit of a story.
Yeah, I forgot about this.
Yeah, the biggest story.
So a couple between our team, always doing well at local events, or one or more of us usually on the podium. There's a bunch of other great players in the area. One of which Yuri, who's been doing really well with his Guardians. And me and him have had some close. I mean, we literally tied for first at the tournament. We've had a couple games where, he's beaten me on tiebreakers and whatnot, and then we've played a couple times. And anyways, that aside, I ended up grudging him round 1. So this is with my Lumineth Realm Lords, and we have a special guest. Everyone, this is my wife Cassidy.
The narrator.
Yes, narrates all our videos. Freshly back from the gym to deliver me candy. Thank you.
Where's my costume?
I know, Ridge didn't wear a costume. Ridge.
No, I got it here. It's here. Ready?
Oliver and I are in costume though.
And
Harley's horns.
And then Maverick, our dog. Anyways, so jumping into round 1. So grudging Yuri. So this is my Lumineth. Again, I actually like all the events locally. I've been really tapped into Guardians, saving 20% of the field. So I took a build that was less tapped into Guardians, expecting not to. Good chance I don't face them. Ended up grudging Yuri round 1 just for shits and giggles, and knew it'd be a good fun game regardless of the outcome. And it was exactly that. So Lumineth versus Guardians. In either of the other builds that I've been playing, I think I'm really comfortably winning that game. But this one, it was a little bit different. Pretty much, I mean, the game itself wasn't not too much to say about it besides the ending. So it was a close game. I guess both armies were doing what you expected. I'm shooting a lot, stabbing him with a lot of spears. He's just moving forward, charging me, and doing mortals on impact, and busting through my units pretty quick. But trading blows the whole game. In the end, it came down to round 5. I think Yuri was 3 points up, maybe, going into round 5. So I'm like, okay, I have to score. Based on the position, I knew he could, if he ran, he could get on the objective and get 2 points, which would put him, all things considered, 5 ahead. So I had to score at least 5 in my round 5 to tie if he did that. And I'm like, also going into it knowing I'm like, there's no way for him to achieve a battle tactic. So anyways, no way for him to achieve a battle tactic. So I get priority in turn 5. I'm like, okay, if I score 5 points, at worst, we tie. And I did Broken Rank to bring it down one of those to finish off a Dargent. Big thing was I tried to do it with Techless to get the extra point, which would have put me at 6 points. And even if he moved on to the objective for 1 point or whatever it was, I would have been ahead 1 rather than tying. So I basically made that play. I went in with Techless first, which he had a really good chance to finish the Dargent. It only had like 6 wounds left. I missed my shooting, so he didn't do any shooting. And then in combat, I did like 2 or 4 wounds with Techless to leave the Dargent on 1 remaining. So I actually pulled the Carl round 1. Well, I guess I didn't really, because I also had Wardens there, 2 or 3 Wardens there as backup to finish it off. But I was like, that was all that was left of my army. So I ended up not getting the bonus point with Techless, putting me only 1 point ahead. So going into his turn, my expectation was he would move on to the objective, get 1 point. The only battle tactic was bring it down that he could potentially try, but Techless was too far. With redeploy, I have the Wardens in the way. I have Finest Hour. I have my Aether Quartz. I have CP. Techless wasn't going to die, and he realistically wasn't even going to get into him. And then Yuri. So round 5. So bottom of the thing, I'm up 1 point. So expecting at least the tie, and Yuri, he had no surprise here, but reminded me that he had the White Dwarf battle tactic to smash my terrain, and it just so happened that his last Dargent, who was a Datebreaker, was sitting beside my faction terrain piece. I did know about this. He mentioned it. Full credit. He mentioned it that he could do it just for full awareness at the start of the game. So no surprise or anything. That's all. I mean, it's not really anything I could do about it. But so he's like, he can either move on to the objective, or he, for the tie, or he can try to smash the train for the win. And he rolled a 2. I'm like, it's a 3-up. He's not smashing my terrain. I win.
They get +1.
And then it's a Datebreaker, so he got +1. So he rolled the 2.
So
the 2 up.
Plus.
Yeah. So got the battle tactic. Edged me by 1 point in that game, but really close game. One of those games where it's like, I mean, you want to win all your games, but such a close game when it's like that fine of margins, you can't do anything about that, right? I think I did everything I can besides Techless leaving. If he had got that 1 kill, that 1 point, we still would have tied. So literally, like, everything I could do, I did. I feel like so. I wasn't like upset or bothered by it. Didn't leave anything on the table, but that was an auspicious round 1 start. But against a great player, Yuri's been consistently doing super well. So great fun game. Tense game at the end, not in any bad way, but just in terms of both trying to do everything we can to win. But started off 0-1.
I do like him going for it though. You know what I mean in that spot.
Yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
You got to just let the dice decide, right?
Yeah, and it is a 2-up, so
84.
Yeah, 83, 84. Like,
yeah, but man, I don't know.
I didn't know he rolled a 2.
He rolled a 2. If it wasn't a Datebreaker, he would have failed it.
Yeah, that's cheeky.
Yeah. That was my round 1. Ridge, all to you.
Yeah, so my round 1, I played Lumineth, which is actually one of the Lumineth daughters. There's a few other shooting armies that I was somewhat worried about that 2 of the people above me play. So I played a guy named Justin. So great guy, great list. He was running non-Techless though. So right away, I know I can not immediately, but with the reroll from the Slan, I can shut down some of his key spells. So just trying to limit the Sentinels. So I think he was running 2 times 20 Wardens, 30 Sentinels, and then some Dawn Riders and various heroes. So yeah, I'm a 2-drop, so I was able to give turn to him. Or was he a 1-drop? Either way, he went first, and kind of just moved up. But he was playing pretty cagey with the Sentinels, which most Lumineth players will do. So he kind of castled a little bit, and I just kind of, on my turn, put Gotrek down the middle and took one side, essentially. So I just absolutely overloaded his one side, destroyed the one side. I think he won Prio. I can't remember the Prio, but eventually I teleported 2 Sallies back because he ended up moving his Sentinels up, and then I just had enough damage to deal with the Sentinels and just kind of took the rest of the board. And then Gotrek was in the middle in turn 2 or turn 3. So I just, I was able to, yeah. It wasn't like anything crazy or, special that I did. But yeah, just having a teleport and having Gotrek was pretty big there. So got the major. I think it was turn 3 or so. And then, we obviously played out the rest, but it was pretty quick. But yeah, I think he was a. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, how different was it playing a non-techless Lumineth?
Yeah, it was huge just because techless is just such casting 4 spells on 10s. If you're not able to get rid of some of those key spells like Lambent Light, like Portal, like, which I'll talk about my last game because my game 5 to win the tourney was against a techless Lumineth list, but a way more seasoned player as well. He was a bit newer to the army as well. I'm not sure how many games he's played, but he was still obviously new. He knew his rules and everything, but it was he has. I don't think he's had near as many reps as my top table. Yeah. So yeah.
And that like techless, the Seraphon matchup is like one of the matchups you want techless for, right? So a tougher one to not have techless against any army that has decent casting.
Yeah.
And, for those of the people who don't know, just talk about kind of like what you do with Gotrek in the pyramid when you combo him in Seraphon, because I think a few players who run Gotrek and Seraphon don't play it that way. So talk about it.
Yeah, so because it's not a spell or an ability to garrison or to come out of a garrison, when he pops out of the Realm Shaper engine, it doesn't count as a normal move. So when he pops out, he only has 4 movement, but you can actually get like 7 inches of movement outside of the garrison because it's just within 6. So often I'll have Gotrek in the Realm Shaper engine. So it's a huge deterrent for alphas, or for people wanting to go into it. And then as well, turn 1, he can usually pop out and then charge something. So yeah, it's just him and Seraphon it's just so nice. And then, like I said, with Cogs, I often keep him outside of 9. So because the redeploy has just fucked me so many times that it's just so annoying. So I, just with the 5s or 6 rolls, which everyone knows that, when you need that big charge, your opponent will always roll a 6. So, so Gotrek is just, you can't avoid him. And I have been, beat by people that have been able to avoid him, and most people know how to play Gotrek, but if he gets into stuff, especially if you can get him within 2 units within 3, which is what I've been, I've getting reps in, been a lot better at wedging him in. And in this game, I wedged him in between 20 Wardens and his Lord Regent. So I popped the 20 Sentinels and then killed the Lord Regent in 1 activation. So yeah, he's just such a good piece.
Nice. All right, Oliver.
Yeah. Gotrek could be really scary. When I played Ridge last, I just ran away from him the whole game. That's the only way I could deal with him. So I played a gentleman by the name of Louise. First round, he was running Idnet Deepkin. Beautifully painted army. I think he's newer into the tournament scene, but we had played actually before, and I played Gargants against him. He played really well in that matchup, but I ended up getting some really key double turns, and the Giants with the Mortal Wounds into Idneth is really tough. Here in this matchup, just like Ridge said, like that charge when you kind of need it, when your opponent rolls that 6-inch redeploy, it can be really critical and devastating. He into turn 2, he won priority and took it. Might have been worthwhile to give away the priority into turn 2, I think, for him, because he went with Broken Ranks is his battle tactic to bring that to kill a unit of witches. I redeployed and got them away from most of his units. He was still able to get his sharks in, but when he got his sharks in, then I released, because of the redeploy, I brought them so far back that then they were now in range of the bow snakes. And then when he charged with the bow snakes, then the bow snakes unleashed hell on his sharks. So they wiped out the sharks before they even got to fight. So he wasn't able to get like what should have been a very easy battle tactic for him, because of like a very lucky big redeploy and then the counterplay with the unleash hell. And then that was like just an extra free round of shooting for me. So then it's like, then I went into my turn, did the hero phase shooting, and just like was able to wipe out pretty much all the big threats before he had a chance to go into like turn 3 of striking first and all the great things that you usually get from IDK on turn 3. So a bit of a tougher matchup for him in the way that one went down.
That's such a big play, I think, or not common, but a smart play. The like baiting into the unleash hell range is like, I know for myself, I often do that. I'll put like a unit, my screen like 10.5 inches out, knowing that I'm going to redeploy and get in within the 9.5. But when people don't necessarily think about that when they're measuring and planning, so that's always like redeploy. Those two abilities both can be so cheeky and impactful. So when you combine them like that, that's pretty nuts. But sweet.
As long as you've thought your CP out in advance, you haven't wasted them all.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Nice.
So I finished with really high scoring points that round, which set us up for round 2.
Yeah. I think, so my brother playing Seraphon also won his game 1. I don't remember what he played, to be honest. So we were, of the 6 of us that were there kind of in our group, we were 5-1, myself letting everybody down. But we all actually, like, my game was 27-26. So I still scored really well despite it having been a loss, which is like, I knew with that game, like I was still going to be in the hunt for whatever at the end. Because based on the numbers, there was only going to be 1, maybe 2 undefeated players at the end. But yeah, so we were 5-1 going into round 2. Tyler, you want to kick us off?
Yep. My round 2, and this is where I started to play against, I called it the Green Tide. This is where it started. But I couldn't have. There's a gentleman that just popped into the chat, actually, Alex Butler, Vanilla J Sky, known around a lot of the communities and stuff. Amazing gentleman, and he's actually from the province that I flew out to. So getting the chance to play Warhammer with a gentleman from British Columbia at that tournament was awesome. So he was playing Iron Jaws, and his list had 21 pigs, the Maw Crusher, my 3.0 sleeper unit, which is the Mega Boss on foot with the Destroyer artifact. That thing can kill 4 or 5 times points it's in damage. 140 points for, I think it was 7 damage attack. He had 8 attacks at 7 damage against me for 140 points. And he also had a double War Chanter with that army. So very cool list. His Maw Crusher was fully buffed up with all the good stuff, Fast Stun, Amulet of Destiny, stuff like that. The battle plan was very close. I can't recall the name. What was, at the moment, the name of the battle plan? But we were starting with 3 objectives. It was supposed to be Apex Predators, but it was switched to
Survival of the Fittest.
Survival of the Fittest.
Yeah.
With
Survival of
the
the Fittest.
Unit.
Yeah, Predator and Prey units. So I selected my prize sorcery, but I selected my Pink Horrors and my Bloodthirster and Be'lakor as my 3, and then he picked his 3. I was able to set up well with my Demon Prince. I did the same tactic I do every first turn. This is going to be kind of funny. He kind of cheekily got me. So I took my first turn. I always do the same thing. I go Ferocious Advance, cast Metamorphosis on my one hero, run all 3 of them to score 6 with 1, 2, and more. It's kind of the way I do that every single turn 1 in the tournament. Didn't matter against my opponent. I always deployed in that specific formation that I can complete that battle tactic in every single game. Then he goes to me, he goes, "Oh, I remember watching about your Legion of the First Prince stuff. You want to stop my battle tactics." So he cheekily picked a battle tactic that I couldn't Bellacore. So that was really smart of him. So I ended up just Bellacoring the Maw Crusher to prevent him from fast stunning, then moving Mighty Destroy, because I didn't want him to Mighty Destroyer the rest of his units. So I had to prevent him from trying to move into me. If you know how Iron Jaws works, Carl will go through it, but the 12-inch threshold is where you really have to be aware when you're playing with Iron Jaws with that ability. If you stay at about 11.2, 11.3 inches, you can prevent them from they have to charge you. They can't move. And with the Demon Prince, even if they get closer, it'll be impossible from the charge if you redeploy. They move in within 5, you redeploy just 1, and then they can't possibly charge you with the have charges. Unless they big wall for +1, but we just went back and forth. I cheekily scored a battle tactic, Savage Spearhead with the monster. He was scoring his. The game came down to one final play where I had to screen out my Kairos, and he needed to kill Kairos with his Maw Crusher for 4 points with Bring It Down with a monster. So that was the play. I failed both my charges, only got 1 in, and he was able to wipe Kairos off the battlefield and win that game. I lost by, I think, 2 battle points against Alex. He's a very, very good player. Iron Jaws is a scary, scary army, the amount of damage that's available to them. And I end up going 1-1, but it was an incredible matchup against Alex. I couldn't have asked for a better game. So that's how that one ended.
Nice.
One key thing I just want to touch on about playing against Iron Jaws is with all the bit of extra movement they can do in different types of phases in 3.0, it's really difficult to deal with because they're moving in the hero phase. They're moving, they're repiling in again with smashing and like you can move another unit before. After a unit's destroyed, I'm pretty sure they can make a normal move too at the end of the turn. So he was moving in phases that I didn't want him to move in to reposition himself, and it was a very difficult matchup. They're going to be scary going forward here.
For sure. Right, Carl. Tell us how scary the orcs are.
So, my second round matchup, because of how well I scored and how well Ollie scored, Ollie and I played. So I'll kind of talk about the matchup from my perspective first, and we'll kind of go through the game, like me and you. So the first thing is Ollie's list is 1 drop or 2 drop? 2 drop, right, Ollie? Oh yeah, it was a 2 drop list, and I was 9 drops. So I knew that he had the choice, and it was a difficult choice for him. We, I think, stood there for about 15 minutes discussing kind of the pros and cons of going who would go first. I think if Ollie went first and he deployed the Iron Heart of Cain, then my damage is reduced quite a bit, the -1 damage. But it does open him up to the double turn, which is incredibly scary. Or does he give me first and try to weather the alpha, try to double me, and then with the hero phase shooting, take out my big threats? So that was kind of the big decision point that Ollie had. Because of, again, Tyler touched it on it already, with the Mighty Destroyers, teleport, fast stun, you have so many tools to move in phases that your opponent's not expecting to, that I could deploy so close to the corner that the hero phase shooting wouldn't touch me. And if he moved up and then started shooting me in the shooting phase, that means he would be within range of 1 or both Maw Crushers to go. And I think Ollie ended up going first. So I'll kind of let him. Oh no! Did you?
No, you went first. You went first.
You ended up giving me first. That's right. You ended up giving me first, and then you screened out quite well. We kind of talked about this after the game, but you left me a gap I remember it was actually this big because that's how big my hand is. That's how much of a gap he left me between a
And
terrain
I
piece.
had to redeploy, and
Yeah,
I could have gone that way to seal it out.
correct to close it. So he redeployed, I think for backwards, right? Which opened
The
up the lane a little
screen for
bit.
your Maw Crusher. So I went
Yeah.
the other way, and I was like, I'll leave a gap of about that big
Yeah,
because it would require his brutes to make a 10 or an
11.
11-inch
Correct.
charge, which Carl did.
Yes,
then-
yes. I ended up doing it. I called the wall, and then I rolled the 9 plus 1 to 10. So my brutes single file went into this column into a gap that big. The Maw Crusher was more of a distraction piece. I usually move up the destroyer piece first to remove screens or to remove some sort of threat off the bat, and then use the defensive Maw Crusher afterwards to grind out wins. But this time I moved up the defensive Maw Crusher to attempt to grab as much aggro as possible. I couldn't kill Marathi, so that's why I used the defensive Maw Crusher. So the brutes went in and they ended up killing, I think, 8 snakes, Ollie. There's only like 5 of them or 6 of them left because you unleashed hell and it took quite a bit of them out. We kind of spoke about it in the end. If you want to fully screen a unit, you put 1 inch in between each and every single one of the models, and at the very ends, you do a triangle so that they're within coherency. I think you wanted to keep the 20 witches alive. I think that's why you put them in 2 lines. But with the Maw Crusher getting in, there was absolutely no way that they were going to survive a water and violent fury and all that, and it would have been perhaps smarter to string them out and have them as triangles in the end. Um, so yeah, I was able to hamper the bow snakes quite strongly, and then we played the back and forth game where you were scoring battle tactics, I was scoring battle tactics. But the other big thing was I think I charged little Marathi and I kept stomping her for 3 moons each and every turn, and after 2 turns you ended up backing her out, but that meant that big Marathi wasn't as effective. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on the game?
It was mostly I think whereas because of Iron Jaws, and especially with how like Carl's a top Iron Jaws player, and it really kind of showed throughout the whole tournament. I mean, because of that, there's so many things that can put out that kind of damage. 20 witches is dying to pretty much everything. Like down to a sense of like even after they've hit, it's not even like battle shock. They'll be dead before battle shock. So I don't even get the 10 witches tacking back with 3 attacks each. So it's pretty much a throwaway unit a lot of the time. And so I would change that in my list and try and drop it down to a unit of just 2 units of 10 for minimum points, and maybe get some shadow stalkers for some teleporting. And the -1 to hit is also kind of key. They're a little bit of a better screen in that sense. And yeah, also like proper bubble wrapping, like just working on that small part of your game. Like some people are really, really good at it. Like Ridge is probably one of the best players that I know for how to screen things out really appropriately with so much experience from teleporting type units. Like that really helps your skill set, but it's something that I still need to work on. And I think anybody who's going into Iron Jaws heavy meta, working on your screening skills is like really, really important for like whatever context your army is and what you have to deal with it, right? Like every army screens out differently or has different tools about how they can screen. Lumineth is so different from Daughters of Cain, which is so different from Seraphon, which is so different from Iron Jaws screening out against Iron Jaws.
Yeah, I think now that Iron Jaws is a thing within the meta, and a lot of players love Iron Jaws, and Oryx is such a popular army that even looking at adding one more unit of 10 or like a 60 point or 70 point unit, if you have access to that, to just double screen. Because I'll talk about what list changes I'll make in the future to deal with the counter pick of more screens later on.
Yeah.
There was
or
one
what I
thing to
expect.
touch on about that is the ability, which I suffer, is the ability to do the super stomp, but with the small shooting attack, because you can clear a screen out, and then once that you can move after.
Yeah,
Then
and
you can
then
go
stomp
again,
again.
and then
Yeah.
stomp again. So now you're already into the meat. It's a difficult nut to crack, or it's a
Yeah.
great point by Oliver about like how to screen against that kind of stuff. But they got so much going on.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, for my game, so round 2, I played against Daughters of Cain, actually, a local player, Ryan, who's got a really solid dock list, Marathi and the Bow Snakes. No real surprises, other than he did have a unit of 10 combat snakes, and then 10 witches, 5 Canary, and the unit of Shadow Stalkers. And you don't, some of those pieces, you often just see more witches or more screens or whatever, but it's all pretty similar in dock. And so in that match, pretty much what it came down to is we were both 1-drops. He won the roll off to drop first, so I knew he was going to have a choice. So I deployed super defensively. Basically, my whole army was outside of his hero phase shoot range, which meant he just wasn't leveraging the snake's 2 turns. It meant I was really far back, but he did deploy first, so I saw his whole deployment. And he put the snakes right on the line. So I knew that he was going to take first. He was going to shoot the snakes. He was going to try and get up in my face. So yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened. He didn't bother shooting in the hero phase because there was nothing to do. Maybe 3 or 4 snakes were in range, and that just wasn't worth it. So he moved up onto the 3 objectives, or onto 2 of them, and then teleported the Shadow Stalkers and deep struck the Canary into the 3rd objective. Threw Marathi right in the center. In shooting, shot my Sentinels. Did really well into them. I don't have power or protection of Techless up or anything at that point. Nothing I can do. He actually killed, I think, 22 with 15 bow snakes, 1 round of shooting, which is actually really on the higher end of what you'd expect for them. So I only had 8 Sentinels left. Wasn't too worried because I had Emerald Knife Swarm. This what people want to target them, and as long as they don't wipe out the unit, I'm burning potentially 7, 8 back a turn between that and rally. So the thing I didn't account for actually is when he threw Marathi up, I just eyeballing it figured he was outside of 12 inches for the charge from Marathi into those Sentinels, because I had the Sentinels on the line because I again figured I was completely out of charge range. So I didn't realize Marathi or the Shadow Queen was in charge range. I just would have pulled the front row of Sentinels and no issues. But then he rolled a charge and rolled 12 inches to get into combat. So I was just like, well, this is a tough situation that I'm comfortable with into a bad situation. In the end, Marathi, I think she split her attacks, maybe killed a couple wardens, but then all the attacks into the Sentinels completely whiffed. Again, I am Shining Company, so -1 to hit.
Yeah.
So I don't know what CPs he had at that point, if he had any left or what he did, but Marathi, between poor perform and outside of just the -1 to hit, so even his wounds, I think he rolled all 1s and 2s, none through with Heartrender. So my Sentinels were alive, which meant rather than being in a tough spot, I kind of instantly was in a great spot, because it meant Marathi was, rather than in the center of the board, she was in my deployment zone, so kind of off center. And so then that was top of round. So this game was over round 2. So it's a lot of talking at the top. But then my round 1, I teleported the Sentinels to a corner where he's never going to go for them. They're way out of the way. They're just now. I'm going to be bringing them back every turn, and there's nothing he can do. I think I brought 5 back that turn between rally and 1 pop of the Life Swarm. Teleported, shot off his general, who is the Melusai, not the Iron Scale, the actual Medusa.
Blood Rat. Yeah.
Blood Rat, yeah. Just the foot one, and then all he's got left is, Marathi and the Shadow Queen. But basically, I set up for the double where I put Teclis in 18 inches of everything. I had my 10 Wardens and 5 Dawn Riders clear the one objective with the Shadow Stalkers and Canary, and then 1 turn 2 priority, which that was actually kind of the big turning point, was that turn 2 priority, because Marathi could have still harassed me. But with me winning it, I wiped out the Bow Snakes. I took both objectives. All that he had left was Marathi and the 10 snakes. That was so top of 2. He's got almost nothing left on the table, and it was pretty much decided at that point. Using Teclis' spell to like make sure the Bow Snakes couldn't use any command points. Every trick to neuter what he wants to do and take advantage. It was pretty much over turn 2, and then just kind of a formality, getting the last 3 wounds on Marathi.
So many good spells, like Jesus, just be able to teleport and then life swarm them outside, and then the next turn, obviously you can rally because you're not in combat, and just like not making people not be able to use CP, Total Eclipse, Feed a Fish, just so many good. Yeah.
It was pretty much like both of our armies are very similar. They're both kind of can dish out a punch at range and in combat. They have strong, similar units and similar tools. But Lumineth is just a bigger toolbox, and honestly, that turn 2 priority was really the biggest thing to decide the game, because he was so aggressive. If he didn't win it, he was going to be in a really bad spot. And he didn't. So, but super well played game. Nothing really much more to say, but started first game in the win column, so I was happy with that. And it could have, with the mistake of not having or leaving,
Sentinels,
that giving him a 12-inch charge potential.
Yeah.
Nearly cost me the game, or could have. Again, with a priority win, it would have really put me on the back foot.
Imagine that. I don't think that's ever happened. 0-2 to start a GT for you.
Has not. Ridge,
cool.
though.
Yeah, so my game 2 was against Matthias Crucial, I think. I don't know, but he was my favorite opponent from the weekend. He was just an awesome guy. We were I don't know, we're on the same level when it comes to our comedy. We were laughing with each other about just dumb small things, and I don't know, just was a great opponent. He was running Petrifex Nagash. So I have played Carl a few times with a very, very similar list. So 220s of Mortec, the 5 Death Riders, the Death Rider Hero, the Arch, Cavalos or whatever. Yeah, and then, or the Liege Cavalos, and then, and Nagash. So I gave him first, I put Gotrek in the temple as I do, and that's part of the screen now. It's amazing because he's such a piece that you don't want to interact with, and then that temple is, 6 inches by 6 inch square. So, having that, and then your skinks, and then the 5 Source Guard if you need them as well. So essentially I gave him first, and then it was either he was buffing up Nagash. He did the old trick that Carl I've seen with the Burning Head. So you cast the Protection of Nagash, pop the Burning Head through yourself, teleport outside of 9, move outside of 3. So he did all of those things, charged in. So he wasn't able to get far enough away that when I popped Gotrek out of the temple, I was going to be able to get into him. So I think it was like a 8-inch charge or something when I popped out of the temple. So he got as far away as he played it right, and not only was he just a super cool guy and we were laughing all the time, he was very good. He knew his army really well. He knew how everything worked. He was actually from BC as well, Buckets, with the guy I played in my game 5 as well, Thomas. I think they came together.
We got some players out here.
Yeah, man, and I know Chomp Hammer as well. Dale, I think he knows that. They're all in either the same club or But so anyway, so he did end up doing that. He killed my screen. But then in my turn, I was able to pop Gotrek out, bring the 30 Skinks over, bring the 2 Salamanders over. put absolutely everything into him, and I still didn't kill him. So he's -1, lessens my rend by 1. The command ability gives you reroll 1s to save. He did get Mystic Shield off, so he was plus. So he was 2 upper rolling 1s, and only with my rend 2 stuff, he was 3 upper rolling 1 save. So even Gotrek, I whiffed on my 6s to hit with both activations. I think I left him on like 5 or 6 wounds. So it could have been bad news bears if I did end up winning turn 2 prio. So, he was locked up with Gotrek, and I didn't actually charge in the Skinks of the Sallies because I knew that when I attack with Gotrek first, he's going to just rinse whatever the other unit is. So I did play for the double a little bit, but even if I didn't win it, he would have to retreat from Gotrek.
Yeah,
or
he can't get away from him.
So even if I didn't win it, I think I still was in a good spot, but I did win the prio. So then I bring it down, blah, blah. I took down Nagash, and
at that point, yeah.
At that point, he's got 2 20s and 5 Death Riders. So, we played it, obviously played it out and everything. And then, but yeah, it was a good game. Yeah, we were chatting about it. Like, what else do you do? Like, you either keep Nagash back and try to score, but then I'm firing down his Mortek units, and you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the right play. Like, I didn't kill him, so, but with Gotrek, it's like, that's one of the reasons, Nagash, Archeon, Giants, like, those are the reasons why I was running what I was running. So it was a favorable match for me for sure.
Nice.
Props to Matt. I played him in my 5th game, but his only loss in the entire tournament was to Ridge, and plot spoiler, that was a pretty good opponent to play. He was an incredible guy.
Oliver, any other comments to add with your and Carl's game?
He's funny.
No other comments. It was great. It was great.
Sucks playing teammates.
Stomp it. He stomped me pretty good. Like when it did come down to the end of scoring, so I didn't get a huge amount of points that game. But Carl did well, and was looking nice at 2-0 going into game 3.
Nice. All right, Tyler, kick us off game 3.
Okay, so game 3, it was the new. I hate saying this. I always say the new Scorched Earth. I always sometimes forget the names of the new battle plans.
Feral Foray.
Yeah, Feral Foray. Another one that I really like this battle plan. There's lots of options to deny battle tactics, score battle tactics, and score hard. I played against Cruel Boys, so pretty cool. I'm a pretty big fan of the army, so that was exciting. The opponent name was Michael. It was great. The game, he was a low drops. 2 drops, I think his army was, so he was able to dictate. But I always set up the same way. Just set up my core, all on my 5-up ward save from Ruinous Orda to try to mitigate. But he had the sneaky play where Bellicor shrugs to my pinks, right? But Cruel Boys have the ability to remove your units before the game starts. So any Seraphon players out there with shrugs, any Cities of Sigmar players with the adjutant rule for your for your rules, be careful about Cruel Boys, because he was able to sneaky them, or I forget the exact term, but
it puts them into deep strike, right?
Yeah, so what it does is it removes the wound characteristic of the unit. So he rolls D3 units, and then he has to roll a dice over the wounds characteristic. So the pinks, he just needs a 2-up. He failed on my 1 unit of dogs. He did roll a 1. So he went with the dogs first. So he failed. He removed, and then he went with my pinks, and he got it. But I knew he was going to do that. I like Cruel Boys. I know the rules pretty good. So I dared him to kind of do that by putting all 3 of my big heroes right in the front, because I knew where all of his shooting was. He had a total of 2 of the bolt skewer kill bows, and he had 9 bolt boys. And the math's pretty good on them, but he had a sludge crawler hero, so he can give them all extra additional mortal wounds on 6s to hit, but he can only buff up 1 unit with his 1 shaman. So I dared him to kill my general. So I put my Bloodthirster right at the center with my aura, Bellicor right beside him, screened out by some pinks, because I wanted to auto run them up if he was to give me the chance at the double. and I had my chariot behind a big piece of terrain. I have to admit, the terrain was pretty as good at this tournament. Lots of line of sight blocking, large stuff to put units on. I enjoyed the terrain a lot. So kudos to Josh and the organizers. So he took the first turn, and I think he's going to try to kill my Bloodthirster, right? Because then he removes my aura. He chooses Ferocious Advance. So I go, okay, I got him with Be'lakor here. I Be'lakor the big monster that he wants to advance with to try to score extra. I roll that 2-up with Be'lakor, so he's able to score his battle tactics. So I was a little upset with Be'lakor there, but that's okay. So he puts all of his damage into Be'lakor after he did that. Tried to kill him. Be'lakor lived on like 4 wounds or 5 wounds. And I was able to position myself in a way that I gift changed and tied up like 5 units with 1 spawn. So I put the spawn in a specific location that it tagged all of his units. And then I was able to just double turn, charge my whole army forward. And it was a bit of a formality after that. My summoning this tournament was pretty good. In that game, I think I summoned in 4 consecutive turns. I hit my summoning. And when you summon 20 pinks in a game, you can...
Wild, 100 wounds.
Yeah, well, 10 demonettes and 15 pinks is what I end up doing, I'm pretty sure, just with my heroes were, but still 75 wounds. But I was able to score the battle tactics, and Legion of the First Prince, I still had my finest hours on my big guys. I had pinks everywhere controlling.
Yeah, just like...
and then I just kind of held on. But Cruel Boys has a scary amount of long-range damage. It's very scary, but... I mean, Be'lakor's hard to kill. Doesn't matter even if you have your shrug. He's on a 4-up ethereal. He was on a 5-up ward save, 4-up, and so, I mean, just got to roll your 4-ups, I guess. But I end up being 2-1. That game I scored a lot of points. One thing about Legion of the First Prince was we've all talked about. The army doesn't score a lot of points. Like my game scores are low, and that hinders in a big event. But it also keeps me at a lower, keeps me in a lower bracket, like a lower, and for me it's all about the wins, kind of. That's how I think. But it keeps me in this middle of the pack area, which I like about the army, but the wins are grindier, I guess. But I end up getting there with that one. So great game. And Legion is sometimes when you're playing the game, it gets a little out of hand when you're summoning that many pinks, but hey, what can you do?
Yeah, little NPE is. I know people were just playing Legion of the First Prince and playing it myself as well. It's like, oh man, when you were playing a combat army or things that want to charge, it can definitely be frustrating. But you know it's going to be there, so you're prepared for those types of things.
Just gonna say this, I hate that term.
Yeah, me too.
NPE,
me too.
Because there's no.
So
it's like the mini ranch. Give me this 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand that. Like it locks stuff down. Armies do that. The negative experience is when you don't know it's coming. That's when it's negative. If you're a prepared player, not everyone is able to prepare and do all that. Granted, but then if you're not able to prepare, it's like you shouldn't be salty if you get surprised by something. And especially around here, nobody's trying to trick anyone. Everyone's super forthcoming in the AOS community with their rules. So I just hate that. Like, excuse.
and in addition to that, it's like. I know Alex was asking about hard counters to Iron Jaws. If you were to take Legion of the First Prince out of the game, like I would take Iron Jaws every single time. Like
they're not very common, so
yeah, that Corn Demon, but having that hinders the army and some combat armies. Like when something is within the meta or is played, then it brings down some other things and brings them into line. It's kind of like rock, paper, scissors. When you take scissors out, then the paper is going to win every single time, right? So like you need to have control armies within the game. And if you're playing within the rule set of the game and what is allowed within the game, then, then fair play to you. Like that, like everything should be like no holds barred. If it's a big... especially in a big GT event, right? Like,
I think the main thing is like I like attacking the game in a way like I don't want to do a lot of damage with the army. Like I know like some things are flashy and 30 sentinels will blow a unit off and then they say that, but they also, if they're not allowed to blow the things off, it becomes a negative play experience. So there's this weird area where it's like, it's like, how do you, like, I could have lost Bellicor on the first turn, but I was willing to risk the whole thing for that because knowing it's a risk reward army. So I want people to think about that when they're playing against it, is when you're playing against Legion, ask questions, because ask questions about the army. If you're worried about what's going on, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's not trying to catch people out. It's not trying to do that, but there's a lot of stuff where we're playing 3.0, not 2.0 here. So that's a 3.0 army. So you got to ask a lot of questions. That's just everyone's got to be asking questions during the game. Like I ask my opponent all the time, what do they have any bonuses to charge? Because my whole thing is to prevent my opponent from charging. So that you always got to be asking questions. And
it's like a different game. You're playing almost a different game, but it is for sure. It's like, yeah, it's a neat army, and a lot of players are doing really well with it. And I know when Rob talks about it, it's like usually the higher skilled cap players are playing them, so that that's why they're doing so well percentage wise. But it is for sure. It's control. It's a different style of army, but it is super cool, and the models are just awesome. So yeah.
Anyways, let's get back on track. Carl,
Mini Red turned into Big Red.
Yeah. Right, Carl.
Yeah. So round 3, I had a lot of pressure put upon me by my teammates, because I was playing Yuri and his Gargants. Yeah, and thankfully we were actually put on to kind of like in a spot all on our own. There was no tables around us, and it was incredibly intense game. I think one of my skills as a player, I'll kind of just quickly touch on it, is theoreticals, like reading a book, looking at units, and knowing sort of kind of what they can do and how to apply those things. Now, I'm not the best person on the tabletop because I don't have any spatial awareness at all, and I hate measuring.
But you just play every army, so you know what every army does.
Exactly. So Yuri was playing 4 Mega Gargants, and I knew if you can hit that wound threshold, that you're in a good spot. And so he deployed in kind of a square, so 2 Mega Gargants in the front and 2 Mega Gargants in the back. And the 2 tankier Mega Gargants were in the front, and the 2 less tanky Mega Gargants were in the back. And I deployed in the corner as I usually do. Kind of like my philosophy for the list and how I generally play is kind of like an octopus. You have the main body and you shoot out 1 or 2 tentacles a turn, and then you try to trade units in order to peel their screens, and then you put your big threat turn 2, turn 3 to try to blow up something that makes their list work. With Yuri's list, every single thing is important. Every single Mega Gargant, holds you objectives. But I knew, because the battle plan was Feral Foray and there was 6 objectives, that if I was able to take out 1 or 2 Gargants right off the bat, that he's gonna struggle to hold objectives. And so, as I predicted, Yuri gave me first because he was low enough drop. And my whole first turn hinged upon if I can cast the teleport spell. And like I said, with Master Magic and it being 7, it's about 86%. So I teleported the brutes on one side, and my fast on Maw Crusher assaulted the other side. So I came at his 4 square block from 2 ends, Destroyer Maw Crusher on one end and 10 brutes with the other. And I had a big decision point as to which unit that I fought with first. And I took a risk and I fought with the Destroyer Maw Crusher first. If I was able to kill the Gargant, then I would activate Smashing and Bashing, and then 10 brutes would go into the second one. But if I'm not able to kill him and then he can hit back on the brutes, he's gonna kill, a certain number of them, and that's gonna hinder the amount of damage I was able to do. Luckily enough, the Destroyer Maw Crusher killed the Gatebreaker with a 6+ after save.
Worth noting, sorry to interject, but This is with the once per game artifact where you're plus 3
Correct.
damage for.
Correct.
So this is like something people super have to be aware of, where you're
Yep.
plus 3 damage on your, so you're 6 damage on your rider attacks or
Yeah,
something.
so you get plus 3 damage, so it's 2 damage base, goes to
Okay.
5 damage, and you Violent Fury him with the War Chanter, giving him +1. So on the first turn, he's 7 attacks. If you all out attack and finest hour, it's gonna be 2s and 2s. If you call the Wah, it's gonna be -2 at 6 damage apiece, 7 attacks.
Yeah.
And then you have the Maw Crusher attacks after that, which is 8 attacks, 2s and 2s, -3, 4 damage apiece. I was able to kill the Mega Gargant with, I think, 20 damage to spare. Like, insane.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is so.
didn't you do 54 or something?
Yeah, I did like
Something
54,
crazy.
55 damage to the Gargant, taking him down, activating my Smashing and Bashing. My 10 Brutes went to the second Gargant. On average, because of me hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s, with -3 rend, he did finest hour that one, but he all out defense the Gargant that was being targeted by the Destroyer. So he was only at a 3+ save. With a 6+ save, 30 attacks at -3, 2 damage each. I only needed 16 of them to go through, and I think it's like something like 85% chance that I would be able to do that. I ended up doing 34 damage, leaving the Gargant
Obviously.
on 1 wound. Yes,
Obviously,
yes,
Carl.
leaving the Gargant on 1 wound. The Gargant hit back, killed 5 Brutes, and I was like, oh shit. He's gonna go in his turn. He's gonna eliminate the 10 Brutes. He's gonna eliminate the Maw Crusher with the 2 remaining Gargants. What do I have left in my army? I have my smelly Maw Crusher and my 2x3 unit of pigs versus 2 Gargants. That doesn't look good on my end. But because of how I attacked him, he was kind of stuck in the corner. So on his turn, like expected, he killed my Maw Crusher and he killed my Brutes. And then he ended up winning the priority into turn 2. And because of that, him and I had a 5 to 10 minute discussion on the pros and cons of him taking it or giving it away from me. If he was to give it away from me because of Mighty Destroyers and how fast Maw Crushers move, I can get to him. If he takes the turn, then he can get up on the mid board and then start assaulting my my objectives. He ended up taking it. The Mega Gargant that had 1 wound was able to march his way all the way across to my middle objective and then burn it. So I had a Mega Gargant with 1 wound stuck in my zone, and then his 2 Mega Gargants in his zone. And then on the bottom of 2, I was able to kill that 1 Mega Gargant with Bring It Down, and that was like, Bring It Down with a monster, all that jazz gives you so many points. And then it became a grind. So the biggest thing was his Gatebreaker with the 40 wounds, the Amulet of Destiny. Yuri tossed them into my smelly Maw Crusher, and they were stuck for 2 full battle rounds just fighting each other. My 18 wound, smelly -1 to hit, Amulet of Destiny, 2+ save, Maw Crusher versus his Mega Gargant. And I kept ending up rolling Roar every single time, so his Fort Crusher Flail was only 5 to hit.
Oh,
That's actually
so
a
good.
crazy move, Carl. Like,
yeah.
You actually don't want to charge. Like, it seems counterintuitive, but if you have the smelly, you don't want to charge. It's better to be charged.
The issue he had was my base was so big, so that 3 inches was basically the objective. So he would have to charge my Maw Crusher to get onto the objective. And so he did that to take the objective, and then I kept Mighty Destroying my my Maw Crusher in the hero phase, and you can pile in. So I kept piling him around his base, like 3 inches every single hero phase, and like in my combat phase, enough where I actually snuck from one side all the way to the other of his base, touching the other objective. And because of what happened in my first game with Julian, I ended up going like, he's gonna hold me up for the rest of the game. I don't want that. I want to free up my Maw Crusher, so I charged my War Chanter into the Gargant. And in 2 combats, the little fellow did 12 wounds to Amulet of Destiny Gargant. And it basically just became back and forth. The really smart thing that Yuri did, and something that I don't see Mega Gargan players do, is he'll straddle two objectives with his big base, and so that when it's your opponent's turn, they have to choose. They choose control first, and then whatever you're contesting, he'll choose that objective to contest and take from you. So he kept doing that over and over. And another big turning point of the game was round 3. He ended up taking it because I had pigs and my mock rusher ready to jump into his Amulet of Destiny Mega Gargant. And so him taking the turn meant I was able to burn an objective, and so I kept stretching him out. So our objective placement at the very end of the game was 2 on his side and 1 on my side, so he couldn't burn for an extra point. And all his Mega Gargants were on that side that had only 1 objective there. It was an incredibly close game. I ended up bringing down the Amulet of Destiny Gargant, and he had 1 War Stomper left. Because of Mighty Destroyers and the like, I just kept trading like my Madcap or my War Chanter or my Weird Knob. I would just touch a point, he would kill it. I would go to the other point, I would touch it with a pig unit, he'd kill that, then I'd throw another War Chanter. And so because I had many more units on that mission, I was able to grind out the win.
Made us
But
all proud.
it was an incredibly close game. Like that, if I was able to do the average number of damage and do 36 to that 1 Mega Gargant, I don't think it would have been a game. 2 Mega Gargants down before you even have a turn, and then your 2 Megas potentially couldn't kill the Brutes and the Maw Crusher, and then having that extra hammer in that game. But it ended up being 30 to 26. And after day 1, I was in the top spot at 91 points.
Nice. Awesome. Well, my round 3, I was playing the other brother. So Yuri and Levon, both great players in the area. So Levon, who was also in the chat, we matched up round 3, both sitting at 1-1, and he was playing Iron Jaws. So I have to give a shout out to Zach, our teammate, who is not at Red Harvest, unfortunately, because we had played 2 Iron Jaws games for the channel, the second of which comes out tomorrow, so check it out. But I played against him with the new Iron Jaws twice, so kind of had a decent feel for the army, and talking with Carl and as a team, had a rough idea of expectations. I think the big thing, from my perspective with Lumineth, his list maybe wasn't as scary for me as Carl's was, because it only had 1 Maw Crusher. But so basically I had choice. I castled up. Again, screening is very important. I used my shrine actually as like the point of a triangle for my deployment zone. It had my Dawn Riders screening out one angle, and then 10 Wardens screening out the other, with Teclis, 30 Sentinels, and my 20 Warden block in the center. And I gave him first. He basically had the option to try and throw stuff in and overwhelm me, or sit back and wait to get shot, which is always a tough thing to do, especially with the potential double. So we tried to throw the Maw Crusher and 6 pigs in. After a redeploy for my Warden screen, the 6 pigs didn't make it, so it was just the Maw Crusher, who I unleashed hell on. And then he blew up my Warden screen, and that was basically it. Turn 2 came, bottom of round 1, my first turn, finished off the Maw Crusher, started shooting down the pigs, and from there, he just couldn't, he won turn 2 prio, but he couldn't get enough units into me at one time to overwhelm me. And I was just in a position where then I can deal with 1 or 2 units every round. And that's what Lumineth likes to do, what the army's built for. And it went Lumineth's way after that. So solid game, tough. The mission actually, because we were further apart. It's the Stitch objectives. I was happy with that mission, and yeah, it's just the matchup favored me. Being able to screen and only one unit making that charge turn one, it was pretty much a bad spot for Levon. Bridge. So that was 2-1 for me.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, so my game 3, everyone will know because Matt was just on the channel. Well, I guess, was it premium? I can't even remember, but
yes.
So he's one of the premium with the Soul Blight Gravelords. So, Matt Kwolek. So we've played before. Awesome guy, just having beers, and he's a good player as well. So he's played Soul Blight for a while. He's been doing really well with it around here. So essentially, I outdropped him. So after like doing a lot of measurements and kind of, there's a good chance I was giving away first, even with no matter what the deployment was. So I gave him first. He moved up, did Ferocious Advance, but he had 1 unit of Blood Knights in the sky or in the grave, and then the other 2 were on the board. So he was running Vordry, the Coven Throne, 40 zombies, 3 units of 5 Blood Knights, Radjikar, and I think that's pretty much it. And then, so the one side, he moved up, did the Ferocious Advance. So then in my turn, I just kind of avoided that whole side with Vordry and the zombies, and just fully teleported my skinks and went Gotrek everyone up the other side. And then I was able to pull outside of the zombies, so they pile in 6. So I measured out the distance that they would auto-run 6 and then pile in 6. And I stayed just outside of that range with my 5 Source Guard on the point. So in turn 2, I was able to I won the priority, give away the turn, so that whole side of the board wasn't able to do anything or get into me. And then I rinsed like whatever the 5 Blood Knights here, 5 Blood Knights here. I killed his Radjikar turn 1. Which, just with the amount of shots, I think he's a 4-up save. So, yeah, the amount of shots from the Skinks and Mortals and everything else. And then, again, I popped Gotrek out, and he made, I think it was a 10-inch charge. So I think he rolled a 9 or a 10. So then after that, and Matt was just rolling like one of those games where he's just already in a pretty bad spot after that and just rolling garbage. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like kick you when you're down type of thing. So he just couldn't get anything to kind of get him back into it. So, and then when I won turn prior, when I was able to give it away, it was just even more of a, just having my double. Yeah. So then, eventually, cleared the one side here, and then, I guess not too much more to talk about. Like, it was another good scoring game for me, so I ended as well, as you'll hear about in our next game. I ended on 91 points as well, so Carl and I were at the top, and so another win.
Nice.
So I had game 2 of Iron Jaws, which was my second of 3 games back to back against Iron Jaws. So started to get a lot more experience with how to play against that army after having a really challenging match with Carl. So I played Andy in my second game. A BC guy, he actually organizes a lot of the tournaments and stuff out in BC. So he's a big like TO out there. I can't remember the name of their gaming club, but they all had t-shirts, so it was great to have them all out. And Andy on this one played a little bit more cagey to begin with, because I think he was worried about I gave away the turn, and he was worried about the double shooting of the bow snakes. But the challenge with my list, especially as Iron Jaws, you really got to go in first, especially if I give away that turn, because then this is where the Iron Heart of Cain came in, and it came in a big way. So I was able to pop that prayer off. He stuck back in his first turn, didn't do anything, just got his Ferocious Advance with his monsters and got some points. Then after that, all he did was then in my turn, I was able to get the Iron Heart of Cain off. That reduces damage by 1 for any attacks that are targeted in combat to one of my units wholly within 12. So really limits the amount of damage that's going to go through. Plus, then I have my blood shield from the cauldron. I have the 5-up damage ignore from my Medusa. And then then when I got turn 2, I put my other prayer on, which is like re-rolling my after saves. So like coming in, reducing damage by 1 on a 4-up save base before I can like cast Mystic Shield and other stuff. It's so tanky. Even though I left my bow snakes like there to be like fully charged, because I don't care when they had Mystic Shield, they're on a 3-up save with a 5-up rerollable after save, reduced damage by 1. Like
Yeah, you're not killing
even
that.
with like a
That's
even
wild.
with a 54 damage Maw Crusher, it's not gonna do anything against that unit, like relatively. As a result, like was able to move up into the mid board with my bow snakes, stop him from being able to take any of my objectives. Meanwhile, Marathi Shadow Queen is just on the flank making work of his guard boys, and was able to finish out the game from there because I had this really castle-y thing that he had to charge at some point with all of his units, but they just fell on it like going up against a brick wall, unfortunately, because I got all my buffs off. So I think if he had played a little bit more aggressive in the first turn, it would have been a completely different game.
Nice. So that left us day 1 as a team. 3 of us on 2-1, and then including my brother who was on 3-0. 3 of us on 3-0.
Mhm.
We were 15-3 as a team, which we're obviously ecstatic with. But we also knew it. Actually, I think there was like in the 6 or 8 of us in the top 10, or top 12 or something like that. It was just crazy. But yeah, so going into day 2, we knew though that meant we would have a lot of inter-team matchups. Especially Carl and Ridge, on knowing that they're both on top table going into day 2. Josh actually didn't have the standings public, so we couldn't see the standings, but we could just add up the scores ourselves and figure out the standings. So
Alex's spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Alex made an Excel spreadsheet of just showing the amount of points as well, so it was interesting. And Carl ended up staying in Alex and my hotel room, so there's even more of us knowing when to play each other.
That's why we made him sleep on the floor.
Yeah,
I made him
slept on the floor.
Yeah, I was getting in his head early, so I was getting prepared for
cheese.
But listen, you can't sleep when someone's snoring, and I snore, so I'm an even.
I know, and I was fully okay with that. I actually got not a great sleep, but I woke up really early, and I was just thinking about deployment pretty much all night. Like, when you're playing Iron Jaws or you're playing something, you have a lot of time to prepare for, and even in our game, we'll obviously talk about it, but we both knew kind of as the game going, it's like you both know what's happening, because we're not making little errors. Well, here and there we will, but it's interesting.
While I was sleeping on the floor, I had the GHB tucked underneath my pillow, and I kept waking up like every 3 or 4 hours, like looking at him, like maybe that would work, and then like tucking it back in and going back to sleep. And I think at the very end of like everything, it was to my detriment, because I came up with a crazy fucking plan. If it worked, I think I would have won the game, but it was just a lot of things
before we get there.
Right.
Before we get there, Tyler, you want to kick us off with round 4?
Yep. Sure. Round 4, I played against Iron Jaws again. Lionel, a local gentleman that owns a shop, nice guy. That was cool. Like they were saying, we knew this matchup. Like, I think I was talking to Carl at like 11:30 or midnight, just stuffed with sushi. He's like, "This is your matchup." We were going through it, and it was the Vice though. So I love the Vice with my army. And I was pretty excited about the matchup, but he had 2 Maw Crushes and 15 pigs and 2 War Channas. But he didn't have an Amulet of Destiny on his Maw Crushes. He had a teleporting Master of the Great Green or something, where you can take D3 mortals on a unit within a certain amount of range and add that to his casting roll. So he was looking to do some shenanigans with teleportation and stuff like that, which I'm fine because I outdropped him and my Demon Prince of Corn prevents all teleporting. He could teleport then Mighty Destroyers though and get like if within range, but if he's within the range, then he has to charge me. So he'd have to teleport outside of 12 to be able to move again. Then I could redeploy. So as long as I roll a 3 on my redeploy, he still can't charge me anyway. So and he knows all this. He the Demon Prince of Corn is the bane of that army or armies like that. So he deployed extremely far back, and I basically deployed almost on the line. And in Vice, you know how far that we're like 40 inches apart from each other, almost like. So I say I'm going to take the first turn, or no, I gave him the first turn. That's right, and because he really wanted me to use my Be'lakor on his Maw Crusher because he goes Ferocious Advance, and everybody knows that I'm looking to try to stop that to try to go with the score 5 points on the first turn. So I held off on it though because that's going to get into me on the third turn, and that's when I need to worry about it. So he scores, and my biggest mistake was I win priority. I get the turn, I move up like only 5 inches, setting up a play where Jordan knows this play, the summon far. So with Legion of the First Prince, you can summon wholly within 12 inches of hero, but some of your heroes can move like 18, 20 inches. So you can summon like 36 inches up the board or 32 inches up the board. So he only had one Gorgrunta on an objective. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go for Gusto right here. I'm going to just try to go for it and try to steal his objective. And I miscalculated on some of my measurements. I did my plan. I chose Conquer. Auto ran my chariot 18 inches. Thought I moved it up far enough, but I was out by 0.5 of an inch. I got my summon, but I wasn't able to score that. So I failed a battle tactic on the second turn of the game. And that's really scary for me. I was pretty shook about that. And I was like, uh-oh. But I was able to activate my Demon Prince. And by this time I had summoned 5 pinks and 10 demonettes, and I already had 10 pinks on the middle objective where it was going to come. So I was just waiting for the objective to pop, and then I was going to just sit there, try to sit there for the whole game. Priorities went back and forth. The entire game, he only killed, and he's playing Iron Jaws, he only killed 1 unit of dogs and 10 pinks against 2 Maw Crushes and 15 pigs. I was able to prevent all combats with Be'lakor and redeploying the demon. Like, he would choose bring it down, move 6 pigs. I would redeploy outside of 6 so he couldn't charge me. Then he'd move his Maw Crusher, and a Maw Crusher that's not really buffed up isn't killing Be'lakor. You need to do. So I just held on, and I barely scraped it out. We talked out the 5th turn, but I was able to just sit 15 total pinks on the middle objective, which is 75 wounds of models. And he's only worth like 5 wounds for his entire army and then a few of the pigs. But I was able to nullify the rest of his army with screens, summoning screens, and chaos spawns. So I just used that to mitigate the rest of his army from moving. And he only basically had 1 Maw Crusher that did anything the entire game. The rest of the stuff was just locked up the entire game. It wasn't able to get in combat into anything that wasn't just like a summoned screen or something. So I was able to secure that win. I was sweating a lot. But the Vice, I mean, the Demon Prince of Corn, you just put them right in the middle and they can't charge onto the middle objective. And then 3-1 going into the final round. So that's how my round ended.
Yeah, the Vice is tricky just for battle plans, just for anyone that, you know, it's one of those ones that you need to be able to, it's hard to score. So yeah, doing Ferocious Advance is pretty much always having a monster is massive. If you don't have a monster, like in my list, it is difficult to score turn 2 and 3. But unless, you know, you have to get riskier and kill the heroes, kill the general, kill battle line, blah blah.
It goes back to a point that Jordan made in the first about having extra battle tactics. You actually can't score aggressive expansion in the Vice. So that tactic
it's
is
very
removed.
tough to if you're.
Well, you can, but
okay,
very tough.
I shouldn't say that. It's possible to do it, but if you're playing against an opponent with some decent skill level, you'll probably never score aggressive expansion.
I'm laughing because Rich scored it against me.
Sorry, Carl. I did not mean I did not mean it like that. It's just the way
No,
that
this is- yeah,
yeah. So
I totally understood.
very, very difficult to score. One quick point about that battle plan, just in case, is now with the new 3.0 rules, you can just start a unit on the back objectives and you can just auto run them, like run them up right away. You don't, if your opponent has no teleporting, you don't have to stay there anymore. You can just, so something to remember, maybe even put your big heroes that can move super fast back there, because if you're not worried about it, then you can move them up to catch up to the rest of your army later, which is what I did. I put Be'lakor on one and my Chariot on the other, knowing that I was just going to move them up anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, all right. Carl.
Let's hear it, Carl.
So it's the second of the inter team matchups for me. I was playing Ridge, and like we alluded to, we had a lot of time to think about our matchup. So there was two. There was one. It was the battle plan was a big issue for my army because it's the shorter end of things. Ridge's list doesn't have as many screens, but because it's so short, when he plants the pyramid right dead in the center, which I knew he was going to do, having played him so often, and having the 10 skinks and the 5 source guard, he can basically lock off pretty much the entire side of the board. So I came up with a really weird play to try to blow up the pyramid because I knew he was going to put Gotrek in it. My list in and of itself can't deal with Gotrek. There's not enough attacks. He reduces damage to 1, so there's no way I'm going to kill that ginger dwarf. And he can utterly just slice through my army when he gets into it. And because of the Vice, he's just gonna march up turn 4. He's gonna hold on to that middle objective, and like, what am I gonna do against that? Like, I can tag the unit. He's gonna kill whatever unit that is. But at that point, Ridge has probably ground me out because of the summoning and the Comet's Call. He's probably killed my heroes. So I had to go for a big play. So my big play was teleporting a unit of brutes outside of 12, mighty destroying them to 8, casting levitate on them from the Madcap Shaman so that they fly, activating Wah so they have +1 to charge, charging the brute unit so that it's tagging a significant portion of the temple, having my fast stun Maw Crusher on the other side of that temple, tagging the thing, and as my monstrous rampage on a 3-up, I'm gonna roll it, and it's gonna blow up the temple. Ridge has to roll dice for each model inside. On a 1, it's slain. Obviously, Gotcha can't be slain. But if he can't deploy outside of 3 of me, then he's just dead. And so I went for this massive game plan. I had to cast an 8 on Levitate. I had to cast 7 on the Greek Hand of Gork. I had to make a 9-inch charge +1, so an 8-inch charge rerollable. And suffice to say, none of that happened.
It's a lot like Jordan with his like Sylvaneth. Like, when those things happen, it's amazing, but so many things.
Yeah, so I ended up casting Great Green Hand of Gork. Ridge rolled the same dice than me. Yeah,
you're gonna reroll it too. So you rolled a 7, and then we were both like, "Oh, do you reroll that? Because then you might fail it." So you kept it because of math, and then I rolled a 7 as well, +1.
+1, so 8. So I couldn't teleport my brutes, but my pigs were still fast enough to get to there. But they don't print as brutes, and so they couldn't lock out the pyramid. My Maw Crusher made a 4-inch charge. I needed a 5 at least. I re-rolled it into Snake Eyes.
Yes, and I even warned you.
Yeah. But there's still a lot of game to play afterwards. I was heavily aggressed onto your side, and you would have to fight out. My big mistake and one that was game ending was I moved up my defensive Maw Crusher. I knew how fast Gotrek was with the deploying outside the temple, the cogs, and all that, and I should have measured more. But because of how the game was going and my plan not exactly lining up. I didn't play as tightly as I should have.
Yeah.
And so I left him on a spot for your main man.
It was a big play. Even if that Maw Crusher got in, you would have definitely killed my Source Guard. But you can tag Gotrek in the temple, but stay outside of an inch. So Gotrek essentially couldn't attack the Maw Crusher back. You'd have killed the guard. But yeah, not getting the teleport was massive.
Yeah, it was the start of it. Yeah, like I said, you can think of these crazy plans and it could work and you look like such a genius for doing it, but I mean the probability of it, like thinking back on it, was so low. But like what options did I
Yeah.
have? Like either I play a conservative game, but because you summon and because you teleport, and you also have more units than me, more bodies, you would just slowly grind me. And it would have been a much closer game in score, but I would have still lost. So the question I asked myself at the very beginning of the day when I woke up was, do I go for the win? Do I enact this crazy plan that will win me the game, but it's low probability? Or do I play for points and then go for second and third? Because I'm so high already. I'm 90 something points. It's and that's just really a question that you have to ask yourself. And me being such a competitive person, I went for the win, even though it's only like 10% chance that it was gonna ever work out. But yeah, Ridge ended up killing both Maw Crushers by the end of his turn 1. A unit of pigs was dead, so I had brutes, and I kept trying to claw a point here, a point there. And as Bucket said, it's incredibly difficult to score aggressive expansion if your
But
opponent knows what they're doing. But Ridge scored it against me.
well,
So
if you it was tabled by whatever
Yeah.
4 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So then obviously I was saving battle tactics, essentially doing the math. I had a little side sheet of like which ones I can score later. I almost even did the White Dwarf summon a 20 summoning points, because we even thought of that. I was like, oh, I could actually get that, but it ended up I didn't need to.
Yeah, you had so many.
Yeah,
So it ended up
aggressive expansion.
30 to 11. Like you were so far ahead of everybody in terms of battle points at that point that you were gonna play whoever. And we ended up quite early, so you were able to observe your potential opponents.
I had a good idea that it was going to be Thomas, like the Lumineth player. So I glanced over at their game. It's hard to tell, and obviously I'm not going to go right in there and like look and ask questions. None of that. But I had a good idea. But no, for that game, it was like the screening was. I'll just quickly just talk about my portion of it.
Yeah.
The biggest part was because Vice, you have to be within 6 of each of those corners. So I was like, I thought I was going to be in a better position to be able to screen. So the way the terrain was actually the biggest portion for me. So because I got that side there was 2 giant like a giant tower on the right side, and then there was a little piece of whatever like normal terrain that you can go on, and then another like kind of just the terrain that got in the way, and I was able to put that temple just directly in the middle. So all my Skinks, Slan, Sallies all fit in the little bit behind the temple. And then I was able to keep just the 5 Source Guard on one side. The 10 Skinks, I actually was within 6 of my corner, but I didn't actually even get my own objective. I had to
one of your corner ones.
I had to sacrifice getting that point, like getting that objective, to screen with those guards, so that you wouldn't be able to get all, depending on what your charge was with brutes. But I did play for you making the teleport as well. But if you would have rolled a big charge with them, I could have been screwed, but I had to go with that because that's, probability that I have to screen out with that. So, yeah, once I finally got the deployment all set, I was decently happy. But as soon as I unbound Great Green Hand of Gork, I was, over the moon.
Like from my standpoint, like I should have gone for that home run play, and all hinged upon the Great Green Hand of Gork. And once I didn't cast it, I should have played a more conservative game so I would score more points. Because the likelihood that I still enact a plan without that teleport is so low, is so minuscule. Like I don't think it was even possible. So
the Smellian for sure. You put him in range of Gotrek popping out of the temple, and then I think it was like a 7 or 8 to the middle pigs or whatever unit was there, and then it was like a 10 to him, and I think I rolled a 9 or a 10 or something, and I got rid of him.
But like,
But
I
small,
should have played more conservative. Even like throwing the destroyer, like I should have rolled the teleport first. If it went off, then start moving my fast on. What I ended up doing in sequencing was moving my fast on, so he was already committed, and then attempting the teleport afterwards, failing it. Now I'm in this awkward zone of my mighty destroyer or my fast on is in an aggressive position, but the rest of my army hasn't caught up with him.
Yeah, you had, if you played it differently, you had like kind of a fail point where you could still back out and not commit.
Correct.
But
because I've already tipped over, I needed to keep going. Yeah.
Cool. Well, big win for Ridge there.
Yep.
Maybe I'll jump in here just to give a recap of my final two. Unfortunately, my doggy Stu really kind of needs to go outside, so I may have to jump through quick. So my fourth game, I played against Julian. It's the same Julian that Carl played in his first matchup, and we saw him in Clash, and I played him in Clash. I think Ridge also played him in Clash.
In Quebec, yeah, he's the awesome dude.
Yeah, super awesome dude. And man, we had a nail biter. It was back and forth, and ultimately I was able to get it. It really came down to the wire, and it ended for our game having the I played quite cagey. I got the Ironheart Cane off, really reducing the damage and reducing how much he wanted to come in. Then in around turn 4, the Ironheart actually went away, and so at that point, then he got the green hand Agoric off, put his Maw Crusher in my back, and charged into the bow snakes from the back, and was able to delete a bunch of stuff. So it was only once the Ironheart came down, because I rolled the 6, that then he was able to bring everything in to bear. But before that, I was up on him on points, and so as a result, like going into turn 4, it was incredibly close, but I won the priority into turn 4. And then at that point, even in turn 5, it was still a game. We did end up have to put dice down at the end, but I did win the priority into turn 5 and was already ahead in points. So if we had fully played it out, like I'm pretty sure because I won that priority into turn 5, I probably would have won the game. It only would have affected points. Now, mind you, had he won the priority into turn 5, I think there was a very good chance that like he still could have he would have finished off Marathi, would have finished off the final units, and there's a good chance that he actually wins that game by one point or so, because he would have stopped my grand strategy, and that was the tipping point because I had stopped his, killing all of his units of pigs and all his battle line units. So a really great game 4. So I was sitting 3-1 at that point, and I finished my final game against Matt and Nagash build, and man, he's such a good player. And he did that trick of the burning head and made himself teleport, and then was able to get in. I didn't screen out the bow snakes again appropriately, and he kind of got Nagash into a good spot and did some pretty good work there. I wasn't playing at my best in that last game, so finished up 3-2. But learned a lot against how to play Nagash in that last one, especially against a player who has such a high skill level. And my parting thoughts on like the tournament overall and everything is like, generally I would consider myself like as a pretty skilled player, and was a little disappointed with the 3-2 result, but like at the same time, like it's an incredibly talented set of players that are out there, and I not just I'm sure here, but like across the world, like AOS is a very competitive hobby, especially at the tournament scene level, and it like sometimes you can be really hard on yourself for like getting a result that's not at the top, like even if you feel like you're playing like some of your best Warhammer. And I think that's really what it's all about. Like if you feel like you're playing your best hobby, then just like continue to work on it. It's going to come. because even though it feels challenging to not like have a chance to be like in a top podium spot and like finish middle of the pack, like that's not bad. Like there was definitely chances there where it could have gone easily a different way. So overall was really happy with it, and I think for people in similar positions, hang in there.
Nice. Yeah, it's like, especially here, I think a lot of the field, you look at the meta, like so much of all the competitive players came out for the event, right? Like it was only 48 players, but it was all like amazing players. So very competitive, tough field. So any wins there are hard earned and well deserved.
Well, thanks guys. It was fun talking. Chat.
Okay,
Thanks
we'll
for
catch you later.
joining and
Cheers,
all those who
Oliver.
subscribed. Really appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone.
Hi, Ollie.
Later.
Hey, buddy.
All right, so I'll jump into my game 4 real quick. Do you want to give a thank you and shout out to Zach for his donation on the channel? Zach, you're the best. Super appreciate it. You are too kind. But it does mean a lot and helps us out with everything a lot. So thank you. But jumping into my round 4, I was playing Ridge's previous opponent. I was playing Matt with his Soul Blight. Again, we've had him on the channel recently. Good buddy of ours. Plays on a lot of local events. Has been doing super well with Soul Blight. 2 1s, 3 0s. I don't think he's done worse than a 2-1 locally at any of our like 1-dayers. So we had played previously, actually like the last tournament before the event, and it was a fortuitous matchup for me, I felt, with Lumineth. And playing on the Vice really meant I had a couple turns of like starting to shoot him before he could overload me. And just with the way he deployed and deep struck and was bringing stuff up, I was kind of able to deal with 1 or 2 threats at a time. I did throw a bunch in, turn 2, turn 3. But battle-wise, I felt very comfortable throughout the game. But actually, Matt played really smart based on the matchup, where also utilizing the priority mechanics or the way the priorities went. He was like pushing up super hard to the center objective so that he was like on it turn 3, so that he was cementing it for turn 4. Now, that was really big because it denied me storing the center objective on turn 4. So storing-wise, obviously that was impactful, but it meant turn 3, bottom of the round, I was able to teleport my 30 Sentinels from the middle of my half to like his back corner to tag his one objective. So I got the hold more there. I think I did Conqueror, so a battle tactic that's harder to do on that mission. That was actually a big turning point. Again, because now the Sentinels are in a place he can't go backwards because he can't leave that center objective that he just like has super reinforced. So exactly. But just the way it was going with attrition, again, feeling comfortable in kind of how that battle was going, having the range supremacy because he has no ranged, and I can kind of deal with his pieces one at a time as they're coming in, or slowly. Like he did throw the 40 zombies in, and it took me 2 or 3 turns to work through them. But I was doing it, and I was life swarm, so I was bringing guys back. A big play, I guess, kind of one of the cheaty plays that I do with Lumineth, not having the Umbral spell portal, and having Emerald Life Swarm instead. I said the wrong one earlier. As I teleported my Dawn Riders, or like round 2, I think, or 3, it would have been round 2, forward to then cast Lambent Light, which I have on them. That's kind of the way I get around not having spell portal for when I need it. And there's some just cheeky things you can do with Lumineth. I mean, it takes 2 spells having to cast spell portal, the teleport, and then with them to cast Lambent Light, but it's the same thing as if you cast spell portal and then Lambent Light. Yeah, so it's kind of another way to still do that without having spell portal, or if you get spell portal unbound, but ended up being big for me to like get the Lambent Light on Vor dry and obviously take a huge chunk out of him shooting. So that was a win for me in the end. And yeah, like Tyler said, we're finishing round 4 at 3-1, as Oliver did going into the round. So yeah, that I think we were all actually there were 2 of us at 4-0, and then the other 4 of us were on 3-1. So all still very much in the podium hunt, and knowing we would have more inter-team matchups. But Tyler, do you want to jump into your last game?
Yeah, round 5. I'm going up against Seraphon Thunder Lizards, which is a nightmare matchup. If you're not familiar with how they work against Chaos, all their damage becomes 3 damage on their Bastiladons that can double shoot. 2 Bastiladons, Croak, Engine of the Gods, Stink Chiefon, Stegodon, and 3 units of minimum battle line. Very scary army against Chaos. And we were playing the final mission was the 4 objectives, which the 2 on each corner are non-prime objectives, so they can be burnt. Sorry, it's escaping my...
Tooth and nail.
Tooth and nail, yes. Another one
Yep.
I actually quite enjoy, playing Legion of the First Prince, taking the first turn. So Eric was his name, another gentleman from British Columbia, wonderful guy, and actually has a lot of chaos models himself. So he was excited for the matchup too. So that was cool. I take the first turn and I deploy everything right up on the line against him, basically with 1 unit holding my back objective. And my whole plan, I've said it before, ferocious advance. But this time I'm going up against Croak. So he's only +2 to dispel on the first turn. So I'm hoping to be able to get Metamorphosis off, and I'm hoping to bait out some more of his unbinds with other spells I'm casting. So
Only
I'm able,
+2.
yeah, only +2. So I go for it, of course. I go Ferocious Advance. If I don't get the extra bonus, I still score 5 points, which is going to be pretty good against him. So I luckily get a nice cast on Metamorphosis, and I'm able to score 1, 2, and more. He denies my other spells with Croak. I think I get off... I don't even get Mystic Shield, actually. I think pretty much everything other than Flaming Weapon was denied. I move on to 1. So I move up to... I put Bellicor, 10 pinks, hard up this side to sit on the 1 objective, and then I put 5 dogs and all my heroes on the other objective. So I basically have 2 castles, and then I have just 5 dogs in the back. And my thought process, I was quite scared because if he chose Broken Ranks on the first turn, and then just shoots the dogs off, the Bastiladons will be able to score an additional point,
Mm-hmm.
which is very easy battle tactic for him to do.
And they're 3 damage against demons, chaos demons.
So I was quite worried about that. So I waited to see what he chose, and he chose Ferocious Advance, and he named Croak. So I thought, and we talked about this after. One of the things about all my opponents is we talked about the games, about what you can do better. Like, he wanted to know what he could have done, and this was the major mistake. It changed the entire game. It basically decided the game, this one play. So I roll, okay, so I go, okay, I'm going to Bellicor Croak, and he goes, and then there it hit him, right? He said, oh no, this could be devastating. I get lucky. I roll 3 up. He can't move Croak, so he scores no battle tactic. And then Hero Phase, I also had the 3 up, so Croak can't cast that turn.
Big.
So he then goes, okay, he puts all his Bastiladons into my general, 1 shots off my Bloodthirster. So now I have no aura anymore for my army. No Ruinous Aura. And he scored 2 points that turn, 1 for killing a monster and 1 for holding 1 objective. It goes to priority, and the way that I had set up, he left me a tiny little spot to be able to charge my pinks with the Kairos dice on a 10 or 11-inch charge into his Bastiladons. So I said, I got to take the turn here, and I don't care about Bellicor here. I got to make that charge, and that's what I did. I moved my pinks up, and I used my Kairos dice to switch my charge. It was a 10-inch charge. I tagged the Bastiladon, so he had to unleash hell on them, and now he had 50 wounds that he could only shoot at for 2 turns with the 1 Bastiladon. I scored 1, 2, and more again. And my battle tactic, I just chose aggressive expansion. Quite easy on that battle plan. I didn't want to fail a battle tactic because if you can complete your battle tactic each turn, I think in this game you have a good chance of winning. If you can fight over an objective and hold at least one objective for the game, you could probably have a chance. So that was my plan. I got quite lucky. I underestimated what he could do. He had the Ridge could help me here. The Glyph Feather Charm or something on the one.
Yeah, Cloak of Feathers for
So he-
-1 to hit.
He
Plus
flew
4
a
move.
giant monster over top of everything, and then he was able to shoot off a bunch of my stuff. But he just can't score here, right? Because I have I'm just holding everything. He double turns me, but we get to the point where my following turn I just score aggressive expansion, Savage Spearhead, and we had no more time left. Now we had so many models on the table. He had summoned like a bunch of Saurus warriors with his Engine of the Gods. I had summoned 15 pinks by 3 turns.
You guys were adding models faster than you were removing them.
Well, this is the caveat here, and this might be very hard to believe, but so during that game, I only killed 80 points. Just one Skink Priest. I did 0 damage. I didn't attack anything else. I shot a few pinks at the Bastildons, but I chose not to combat him with any of my heroes really or anything. I just sat on the objectives. And if you can win a game by killing 80 points,
man, that Skink Priest is very important to him. So remember, I was telling you before the game that often people will, which I actually did in one of the bat reps if AOS 3 first came out, is they will do all-out attack on the Bastillodon and then double tap it with the CP, but you can't because it's the same CP in the shooting phase. So that Skink Priest is invaluable because he gives you that Herald of the Old Ones for +1 to hit. Then you can all-out attack the other one, and then you double tap the one that you did Herald of the Old Ones on because it was in the hero phase. So that killing that little 80-point hero is actually very, very detrimental for him.
Yeah, it ended up using the spawn to just sit in an area where it was frustrating for him. It was just he had to deal with it. It just plopped it right in the middle. But I was lucky there by getting that Bellicor roll. The game could have been different if he was able to score that. But when you're up, by the end of the second turn, I was up 11-2 in scoring with him starting his second turn. And I was able to hold on for the win against Eric. Very good player. Plays a lot of Seraphon. His army was beautiful. And he was from British Columbia. He was from British Columbia also. But I was able to get the 4-1, which I was so happy. It's all I could ever ask for. It was incredible, but every game was tough. But we talked about it after. He asked me, what could you have done different? I said, you go broken ranks first, and then you go bring it down or something on the next turn. And he probably would have had a very good shot at winning that game by staggering his battle tactic selection differently or choosing different battle tactics. And that's what it comes down to in those tight games is a simple thing like which round you choose which battle tactic. Are you able to continue scoring those points and stuff? And that's what it came down to was basically just battle tactics.
Nice. So finished the day 4-1.
Finished the day 4-1.
4-1, yeah. So awesome result.
Yeah, low scoring in points. I think I finished with 119 points, which was okay enough for 6th place, which is awesome. But yeah, the Army didn't score a lot of points, but I'm happy with the result.
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
Didn't get a chance to play against any of you guys though.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's we played on Friday just for fun, but
we did.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't have mind. Just we usually try to avoid each other, but coming all that way, didn't get to play any of the pals. So
yeah, round 5. I had to play Jordan. It came down to I was either playing buckets or playing Jordan, and I was okay with either one. It sucks playing a teammate. But yeah, Jordan's Lumineth list is incredibly good. And so I had to play out of my butt to even attempt to beat him. But Tooth and Nail was the corner deployments, and we're so far from each other. And because of how fast I am, again, I castle up in the corner, and Master of Magic with the Great Green Hand of Gork just unlocks so much potential for the army. I don't think I would run an Ironjaw's army without that combination
Yeah,
of
so good.
command trait and spell. A lot of people just run Great Green Hand of Gork and just try to roll the 7, and that's like 50 whatever percent chance that you do so. If you can increase it to 80 something, then you can start to game plan using that spell. And so I deployed in the corner outside of the range of sentinels. And
Also,
so
outside of the range
Jordan
of
had a choice.
unbinds, which was really big.
Correct. Yeah. I just place my my guy right in the corner. And
Literally.
so yeah, so either you come into range of 30 inches of him, which meant the Maw Crushers can kill whatever's gonna unbind him, or you just leave him alone and let him do his thing. Of course, that's not a viable tactic against Seraphon, as we saw, because he could unbind table wide. And so Jordan, talk about the decision, either giving me first or taking first, because you were a 1-drop and I was a 9-drop.
Yeah, so it was actually very interesting. Again, unlike Levon and his Ironjaw's list, you could reliably put 2-3 units in my face between the double Maw Crushers and whatnot. Now, I deployed in such a way where I was defensive enough if I wanted to give away the turn. And actually, the big thing I learned from playing Levon, and actually, just why I highlighted it in your previous game against Yuri, the damage output of that once per game artifact is just insane.
Yeah.
So what I did, similar screening out, I used my temple to kind of block off a spot and then have 10 wardens strung out and 5 Dawn Riders. The important thing I could do in this deployment zone was have everything else outside of 4 inches. So if you charge and then pile in, you're still not hitting any of my second ranks.
Yeah.
So I could, what that allowed me to do, and the decision I made, was to give away the turn. Then Carl had deployed super defensively. So when I wasn't really going to be doing much with my turn. And if I did anything, I would have to kind of break out of my castle, which with Ironjaws, obviously you have so many.
I wanted you to break it out of the castle.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was defensive enough where Carl could wipe out both my screens and not hit anything behind. So so I did that and gave Carl first.
Yeah. And so because of how you're deployed, my Madcap Shaman at 80 points wasn't going to do anything. His spell is sort of relevant in the meta now, because it's -1 to hit to a friendly unit wholly within 12.
And shooting. Yeah.
So you put it on your Maw Crusher, you charge them in, and shooting armies have a tougher time of getting through. But he wasn't relevant here because of the mortals that you do. So I placed him on one objective by himself, like little dude. He ended up holding that objective for I think 3 turns or something, but just by himself. But the decision I made in my first turn was, if you were able, if I play super cagey and I let you just move your castle like lockstep, the 36 inches of your threat meant that you would ground me out. So I had the decision that I needed to trade one of my pieces for your screens and open you up for turn 2 to 5, where my Maw Crushers could be leveraged to do the damage at your hammers. And this shows the weakness of the list that I took at Red Harvest. I took Brutes, and Brutes have more damage overall than Gorgruntas, but Gorgruntas have the advantage of doing mortal wounds on the charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that unlocks the ability for the Maw Crusher to stomp, in addition to the mortal wounds of the Gorgruntas, to eliminate the screen, D6 move, and then 3-inch pylon meant that even if you screened 5 or 6 inches behind your line, there's a potential that I can get into the back end. But I didn't have the option, and so I made the decision to trade my Destroyer Maw Crusher to take out both your screens.
Yep. And you obliterated them.
Yeah, like just utterly obliterated them. And that meant that on your turn, I could predict that you were gonna use a significant amount of your turn to try to kill that Maw Crusher itself. And so I was relatively safe from the double turn because that Maw Crusher was pinning you into your corner.
Yeah, and that was a big thing. Giving you first lets you jump out to storing, and having killed both my screens meant I didn't have just like a little cheap unit to throw on an objective to store.
Yeah.
So I don't think I stored any objectives. Oh no, I had
Your
held
own.
one because it's
Yeah.
the square.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Maw Crusher kept me pinned in, which was really big, and there was the potential threat of another one and a teleport, whatever, coming in.
Yeah.
So actually, what I had a kind of back pocket play that I kind of knew I had the potential to do in the game or in a game or any game, but if I needed it, and this was, I tried it here, which is to double cast my Lord Regent. I am a Zytrax, so I have the Overwhelming Heat spell, which is half the movement of something. So what I did is I double cast my Lord Regent, and then I teleported him. He also has a 4-up ward in Zytrax, which is nutty.
Yeah.
So I teleported him, tagging an objective, to then cast Overwhelming Heat on your other Maw Crusher. So even with Mighty Destroyers, it was only moving 12 inches.
Wow,
My army,
yeah.
the rest of my army was safe.
Yeah.
And then I was going, and then I went to cast Lambent Light on the pigs, which meant I would have eliminated the pig unit. It was just 3, but I would then hold 1, hold 2, not more, but hold 2. That's just a point, right? But I miscast Lambent Light, so did 1 damage to myself, no big deal. But the big thing is because I had the Aether Quartz used already, I couldn't re-roll that.
Reroll. Yeah.
You miscast a few times this weekend.
I missed miscast 3 times,
in
all
my
against
in my
Carl.
game. Yeah.
Or, and again, in situations where I couldn't re-roll for one reason or another, whereas if I miscast any other times in other games, I just re-rolled it and it was no issue.
Mm-hmm.
But again, so that meant, well, I did have the movement of his Maw Crusher, which was huge. I didn't kill the pigs. You had 1 alive, didn't run to Battle Shock, so you kept that objective, which I at this point, again, just like knew wherever you end up at, 4-1-3-2, that points are so important for tiebreakers. And I was just trying to scrape every point. So Carl putting the pressure on really, made it a tough game.
Yeah. We're talking to each other like in the midpoint of the game. I'm like, Jordan, come on, man, let me score points. And you're like, you're not letting me score points. We're just taking each other down now. We're just gonna.
I will say, you never actually, like, to your credit, and I think both of us, played a super tough, clean game. Neither of us were like, and this is how it should be, right? What we both want each other to do well. But we both want to win, and we both want to maximize our points, even if we
100%.
lose.
So it was just incredibly frustrating. I was like, let me score points.
Yeah,
like, I want to score more than 3 in a turn.
Yeah, but
yeah, and then that play. So the teleport, I knew it was coming, but I didn't see the teleport into the Overwhelming Heat, and that blew me away. Like, I had all these designs. I put my Maw Crusher basically way off to the side so that I can Mighty Destroyers him and then punch you in the face. But with Overwhelming Heat, I'm like, all my plans just got thrown out the window. And I'm like, what do I do now? So round 3, I decided to try to kill the dude who freaking Overwhelming Heat me.
Yeah.
So I chose Warlord, but because of the 6-inch move, and me being Mighty Destroyers inside the 12, I couldn't move in the Mighty Destroyer phase, then move in my movement phase. Like Buckets was saying, that 11 point something inch zone is so important for Iron Jaws. Either you're way outside or you're within the 11 inch. Because I moved the 6 inches up, and then I think you redeployed him, or you were far enough out where I didn't make the charge, and so I failed that battle tactic, and so I was on the back edge, having to claw points to try to get to you.
Yeah, and no rerolls because of Total Eclipse. Like,
Total Eclipse was big.
That's normally a very not comfortable, but a matchup that favors Lumineth, and the whole round or the whole game, I was not on the back foot, but you were you were throwing a unit by unit in my face that I had to deal with.
Yeah.
Round 2, you teleported 10 brutes and made the charge.
Brutes. Yeah.
So another thing that's in my deployment zone on my objective, you didn't store it, but like you're just keeping me in my. I have 3 units at that point. It's like, well, Lord Regent 2, but it's Techless, the Sentinels, and the Wardens, and they were all having to stay around that one objective. Yeah. And I wasn't storing like even hold 2 for like the first 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah.
I think the first 2 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah. You ended up breaking out, just to make a long story short. You ended up breaking out, teleporting the Sentinels onto a mid board. Techless slowly moved his way up, and then we basically flipped. And so you were on my quote unquote home objective, but because of my teleports, I had teleported pigs and a war chanter onto your objective, which was able to score me my grand strategy. But because I failed the battle tactic to kill your warlord one turn, and then on a subsequent turn I tried to take Conqueror, but we were tied. I needed to do 1 more damage. Here it is for the people who watch this channel. I had to do 1 more wound to do Conqueror. And so because I failed those battle tactics, like Tyler alluded to before, if you're able to score battle tactics, yes, fight for primary objectives, but like, I mean, 2 points is a lot on each turn. Having failed 2, like, it was just big.
And in the end, so kind of by round, I think 4 or 5, we knew that the game was decided, but it was just like scoring as many points as we could. It ended up being 27-21, a final. So still really good scoring game for Carl. And a really good play and performance kind of in a tough matchup, which
I actually
wasn't
also
what I
made
wanted.
I also made a huge mistake because I have a book where I write all round by round battle tactics and that sort of thing. But you do the same thing. So I was like, hey, Jordan, do you mind writing it down? And then round 5, when round 5 was over, I was like, okay, roll priority. And you're like, no, we're done.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a second. What do you mean we're done? Oh, there's we already played five rounds. And so, I mean, goes to show, like, if in kind of like a GT, it becomes kind of a slog. Like by round 5, your mental resources are taxed. You're so tired. You've been awake for so long. Like, just write it down on a piece of paper, just so that I thought I had a chance to pull it out. I was like, yes, I'm gonna complete this battle tactic with a monster. But I should have done that a round earlier. I was saving it for my round 6 battle tactic, which obviously didn't exist.
And that's usually the time you need to be most focused, because your game 5 is usually, your most important one. So it's
So I ended up playing 3 teammates throughout the weekend. I finished 3-2, but I played, each one of my opponents was not a gimme. It was incredibly hard fought, each and every single one. I ended up playing Ridge, who won. Yuri, who won best overall, but was second in best general. Then I played you, who you were third. So I played the podium 1, 2, and 3. And then Ollie was, top half, and so was Julian. So I played.
Talk about strength.
Had, the toughest or the highest strength of schedule score.
Strength of schedule for sure. Fuck, that's wild.
Yeah, I think the average win was 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. That my average opponent was 4-1. So.
Yeah. So, nice. in the end, as Charles said, Ridge was the only 5-0. Alex, actually going into round 5, interesting. I think that you look at the top 5 tables, based on matchups. It was Ridge was on table 1, Alex was on table 2, me and Carl were on table 3. Tyler, I think you were on table 4, and Oliver was on table 5.
5, yeah.
So sort of like the top 10 guys, there were 6 of us were fighting on those top tables, which is again, you're not going to win all your games. You're not going to go 4-1, 5-0 every time, but just it's more about being in that position at the end, and then there's sometimes things you can't control. So just obviously like individual performance is cool and important and exciting as well. But I think like most proud of the team, like just overall, like how Wildlifer did was pretty exciting, and again, just it made me super proud of everyone. Just
Yeah.
want to make a statement.
Rachel, your
Yeah.
your close game there.
Oh yeah, Rich, you
Yeah,
didn't even go through your game
Yeah,
yet.
No, it was whatever. That was super. So my opponent and I both, Thomas Bakke, so he was another, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but another guy from Vancouver, or at least from BC, not Vancouver. So he was running something that I've played many times, and what Jordan, very similar to lists that you have played. Not your list now, but actually it is very similar. So it was Techless, 2 10s of Wardens, 30 Sentinels, 5 Dawn Riders, but he was running the Cathalar and the Lord Regent. And he was running it in Syar, so a little different. So I know Syar, I know Goading Arrogance, I know, all these tricks that Lumineth have. So that obviously helped a lot. I chatted with Jordan a little bit before, and our plan was to, this was a good battle plan for me because of the teleport and the mobility. We talked about just possibly killing the Wardens and leaving the 30 Sentinels. Everyone always goes at the 30 Sentinels because that's the massive damage. So after having a kind of plan what I wanted to do, I proceeded to not do that at all and went completely against what we chatted about. So he was a 1-drop naturally. I deployed everything outside of 36 so that he would have to get that add 6-inch range spell or Speed of Hish on the Sentinels to be able to get into my good stuff. And then I put Gotrek just right. So the terrain, it was just behind a piece of terrain. Which the Sentinels obviously don't care about, but just right up in the front. So I was going back and forth about putting him in the temple, but having to stay super, super far back wasn't going to be good for him because he's not going to be able to get into them. So we agreed, and this is one thing too with terrain. So there was a lot of random, big, tall pieces and random stuff. So we agreed that just terrain was going to be impassable. Which is something that if it's not in the pack, some pieces are garrisonable, some pieces aren't. You know what I mean? It's something that we kind of agreed upon. So so I just put Gotrek up there. So then he gave me, he went first. So he wanted to get his buffs up, protection, Techless, all that stuff. And I thought he was going to go after Gotrek. So he needed to get off. I knew I needed to unbind. The Power of Fish was. Yeah, because Power Fish isn't huge because the Regent can cast Greater Power Fish. So, you know what I mean? I knew they were probably going to get that off. So, but yes, Lambent Light or Portal were a huge, huge portion. So he did end up getting off Portal, but I did unbind Lambent Light on an 11. Nice. So he cast it. Yeah, so he cast it. I rolled the 11, so it was a 12. So that was absolutely massive. And then, so he took down the Sally's turn 1, but he only did, I think, after my 6-up wards from the Ashleth, I had both Sally's, one with 1 wound and one with 3. So amazing for me to go into my turn having pretty much all my units still and in Gotrek. So in my turn, I was able to cast Cogs, and then I got Gotrek into his 10 Wardens, Lord Regent, Techless on the left side. But so this is where he was very he was not upset, but his plan was when I moved Gotrek up, he was going to redeploy his Wardens so that when I charged them, I would be within 6 of the Lord Regent, who would then activate that the Gotrek would have to attack the Goading Arrogance. But I stayed outside 9, and so we couldn't redeploy. And then I had +1, and I rolled an 11 with Gotrek. So he got right into the middle of Techless, the Regent, and the Wardens, and both of us were like, "Oh wow, that's maybe game," because he's if I can delete Techless or any of those. But what ended up happening is so I had to attack the Lord Regent obviously first, so I killed him. But it's the end of the combat phase that I get to pile in again. So he actually ended up killing Gotrek with the because the Wardens had Power of Hish and Techless had a bunch of attacks, and I just failed a bunch of 3-up ward saves, which you can do, you know what I mean? So after that, I was shaky. I was just oh no, whatever. So I teleported the 20, I teleported my Sallies. I kept my Skinks back, and I killed a bunch of Wardens, and then he won priority. So I was just oh my god, table 1. This is pretty much. I knew too if I won this game, us two were both so far ahead of Alex and his opponent that the winner of this game was going to win the tournament. So obviously both of us were like, like nervous and trying to move quick. Both had a lot of stuff to do. So what ended up happening? He won priority, killed the Sallies, moved Techless, and this was pretty much what caused the game. Is that he didn't realize he made a mistake with Techless, and he moved. He cast Speed of Hish, which I know you always do, Jordan, as well, to make Techless move 24, which is amazing. But he didn't realize that when he moved him outside of near where my 30 skinks and little bunker was, that he wasn't able to fit his base to complete the charge without because this giant tower of impassable terrain was there. So he didn't account for that. So once he got there, I didn't kind of realize it at first. When I saw it, I was like, oh crap. Then I looked, I'm like, oh my God, he's not going to be able to get in there. So when he realized that, obviously it was one of those moments like, oh my God, table one, like I'm not going to say, oh, you can't charge me there. Like, so that left Techless just kind of sitting there. So then my turn bottom of 2, teleported the 30 skinks behind his sentinels, killed like a ton of them, and then got his point. So I got my battle tactic there, and then sweet costume. Yeah. So then pretty much then he won priority again, turn 3. So moved Techless in, killed whatever the 2 salamanders, but essentially at the end of the day, I was able to eliminate his sentinels down to I think like 4 or 5 models, and I was able to, through a few different redeploys on one of the other points, I was able to deny him scoring more because redeploy was just nutty with like 5 skinks left. He has like 6 wardens. He kills whatever, like goes outside 3. I redeploy. Or I piled onto an objective to make it so he didn't get a point one time. So just a lot of small little plays that I was able to just deny how much he could get. So then it ended up being at the bottom of our turn for the game, I needed to kill. So he ended up moving his Dawn Riders and the Wardens onto top right point. I needed to either move, shoot, and charge them on, or I needed to, which is what I did, I summoned 10 skinks. This is also notable that you can't charge or shoot when you bring your summon unit on in Tooth and Nail. So that I knew that was going to be, so I didn't summon Sallies, I was just doing skinks. So those 10 skinks that I summoned in turn 3, or the turn previous, ended up being huge because I was able to just auto-run them 6, move them 14, so all 10 of them got onto the point. So I didn't even have to actually make a charge at the end of the game to win the game. So I was able to just run those 10 on, and then I was able to shoot them. I think it would have been like a 6 or 7, but then he could have redeployed. Like, so those like for sure moments when I realized I was able to just run it on for the win, I was so happy that it didn't come down to like me failing a 4-inch charger. Yeah. But it was an absolutely incredible, like it's probably the best game. Well, one of the best games I've played. Well, for sure, like top table at GT. So definitely in that aspect. But one of the also like mentally taxing games that we both played. Like we were both like just losing our minds, like constantly thinking of so many things. If I won a priority, obviously would have been amazing, and I think it would have been a little sealed a little like earlier. Yeah. But so that Techless play, I felt so bad, man, when he did that Techless play. Well, not felt bad, but like just that small. No, but that small mistake for him, like, you know what I mean? Table 1, like, for the tournament, and just not realizing you can't fit Techless in there, I was just, oh. So, yeah, it was, I won, I think I ended up winning by just 2018 or something, like 2 points.
Yeah, incredibly close.
Yeah, really close, and huge shout out to him. He was, like, very, very good. Like, he didn't forget much, and a lot of his plays, other than that one with Techless, were spot on, and yeah, like the goading arrogance play, like things like that, like are just so good.
His army looked fire too. I think he won best painted too.
Yeah, he did one best painted. Yeah.
Between both years, it was almost like an intergalactic battle, right? Like galaxy based, because you were both kind of had these like spacey, like you know what I mean, like with your beautiful army and his together, it looked cool.
Yeah, he had lots of purple, like all his capes and stuff. Black, I put pictures up. Like man, his armor was awesome. Yeah.
So Bridge taking the big W, first place. Yeah, the only 5-0. Spoiler: Alex ended up losing to Yuri. on table 2. So Yuri came second. And he was a couple points ahead of me. I ended up coming third. Then yeah, like again, I think it's like 23-7 as a team in the end, or as a group, which was it's amazing, over a 75% win rate. And when you took out like the 3 inter-team matchups, it was
20, you mean me?
Yeah, it would have been 20-4, which is a 4-1, 80% win rate. So pretty nuts.
We did incredibly well.
Yeah, super happy
as a team. Yeah. I just wanted to do a little bit of closing thoughts, kind of from the IJ perspective, and kind of my list and what I'm gonna take in the future. The biggest issue with my list, I was incredibly happy with how it performed. I'm probably gonna be sticking with Iron Jaws for the rest of 2022. Maybe expand into Big Watt at certain times, but Iron Jaws is going to be kind of my competitive army now.
Okay, Carl. I'll see it when I'll believe it when I see it.
Can I buy your Nagash army? I'm just kidding.
if you want to. What it was missing was the 10 brutes. While they were good, I was banking on the models don't count if they have 1 wound. It never came into effect in any of my games, unfortunately. I would replace the 10 brutes with 6 pigs, and I kind of touched upon it before, because of the prevalence of Iron Jaws now and how people are gonna start to have screens. You need to clear screens prior to the combat phase, in order to be the most effective. And when you have the pigs charge in, do the mortal wounds, you do the stomp. Once a 10-man or 10 wound screen is gone, then you're able to move d6 and stomp again. And if there's no models within 3 of you, you can keep doing it, basically. And so you can get into the meat of an opponent's army relatively quickly with that. Kind of in my game against Jordan, I had to throw a big piece to just eliminate screens. If I'm able to do that prior to the combat phase, then I'm in a deeper spot. So that's kind of the only thing that I would change. Master of Magic with the Weird Knob Shaman, the teleport is just so good. If you're running Iron Jaws, I encourage you to run that and choose your grand strategy as Wa. If you're running 2 double Maw Crusher, there's no good grand strategy for you to do. In a previous tournament, I went 1 and 2, and my grand strategy was Beastmaster to keep the Maw Crushers alive. But most games, your Maw Crushers are dead because you're using them as wrecking balls. But that 90-point hero teleporting in the corner is just a throwaway piece. Like 90 points doesn't matter all that much in a list, and to guarantee a grand strategy for 90 points and to unlock plays like teleporting your fast 1 Maw Crusher outside of 12, using Fast Stun to be outside of 3, then using Mighty Destroyers to charge your opponent to get around Unleash Hell, to get around Redeploy. Like there's a lot of things that you can deny from your opponent when you have that teleport unlocked. You do have Hunters of the Heartland available to you. So I think that might be a consideration in the future for lists. So that's kind of my takeaway from it. I did go 3 and 2, and I won best destruction at the tournament. I was overall aiming for 4 and 1. It was my bare minimum of what I wanted to do, and like I would have been happy with a podium. Of course, it didn't materialize for me, but even with all of that, I was incredibly happy with how I played. And the 3 and 2 kind of doesn't speak to the level of ability that I kind of exuded in during that tournament.
Yeah, you are,
except for Rich's game, because that was a fucking
but then points wise for tiebreakers, you were far and away the highest scoring 3-2 player.
Yeah, I ended up with 127 or 28 points.
Yeah,
which is
super
more
happy.
than I scored.
Yeah.
Yeah, really happy they do the well, not really happy, but strength of schedule. I know some tournaments in the States, and there's been some that, if you have multiple 5-0s, they go to strength of schedule, which it's obviously one of those topics we don't need to get into, but this one doing battle points next, which is because of Gargants and things like that. There's that too, so it's like, I don't know.
This is actually something I wanted to talk about as well. Post Red Harvest is kind of like looking at it. We did, as Rich said, battle points is the first tiebreaker. Not which battle points really determines your wins, and then also determines your first tiebreakers. I've never, it's kind of always been the system isn't an issue, I don't think, but the prevalence of Sons of Behemoth in the meta makes it an issue because of how many extra points they score. Basically, largely for us in our area, if we have the same record of Sons of Behemoth player, they're getting at least 2 or 3 more points a game potentially. So you have to play out your butt, and then tiebreakers, they're still, after 3-5 games, they're still to beat you by a couple, which is annoying to say the least. But we're also, some of us are going to Du Bois, a GT in Rochester, New York in November. And I really like their scoring system. So what they're doing is, instead of just like your battle points or your victory points being what your score is for the tiebreaker, it's like a bare base number for the major win, which they're doing 25, and then you get 5 extra or 1 extra per battle tactic you complete. So if you do it with monsters, like Sons of Behemoth is getting all the extra points, it doesn't matter. You get 1 point for it. So it's more about generalmanship in terms of, do you do it or not did you have 3 monsters in your list, so you got extra points every round, which I personally like, and I'm a fan of that idea. It'll be interesting to see how that affects standings and whatnot. And then it's also 5 points for the grand strategy at the each game. So a maximum of like 35, so 25 to 35 for the major win, which is pretty much in the realm of what games are at now. But it also irons out the issue of like the one mission where it's like it's a 1-0 because there's no scoring on it. It irons out missions like that, so it solves a couple problems. So hope to see
strength of schedule too, just with people dropping or just not getting points. It's absolutely a joke that how that can
screw you. It's not
you can't even control. You can't control it. Yeah, it's like it's. I just hate that. But
all right, guys, I might have to do my goodbye now. I'm gonna have to get
the
kid out trick or treating.
Yeah,
he's chomping at the bit. I gotta collect my tax too.
Yeah. We'll catch you later. We may as well wrap it up here. But so big thank you everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, learned a little bit.
Thanks everyone.
We'll be playing some more matches and check out our battle report tomorrow. And we'll see you soon. Another video. Later.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Oh, we're
oh my god.
Thanks,
honestly,
guys. Sorry that was so long, guys.
I don't know how you